Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the very first Committee of Council meeting in the new year, January 2023. Happy New Year. It's really fantastic to be back. I hope everyone enjoyed their holiday. And let's kick this new year off to an amazing start. We'll begin by checking to make sure who is here today. I see all members here present in person, and I know that Councillor Fortini and Councillor Majeros are joining us remotely this morning, so no need for a roll call as per what the clerk has advised. Our next agenda item is approval of the agenda. Do any members wish to add a business item on today's agenda? If so, please indicate in the chat or please put your name on the board. Councillor Palleschi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'd like to add an in-camera discussion item that is solicitor-client privilege, subject to appeals in Ward 6. I've spoken with the City Solicitor. Samir?
Through the Chair, I've spoken to the Councillor and I've spoken to the City Clerk, and we can go into closed session for matters, litigation or potential litigation.
Okay. Thank you very much. The Clerk has noted that accordingly.
Ward 6.
Anyone else would like to add anything to the agenda? I see, yes, Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Chair Santos, just to advise, the Clerk's Office received this morning some additional delegation requests regarding matters that are already on today's agenda. In regard to item 6.2, which is a delegation and a related report regarding the Queen Street Highway 7 BRT business case and TPAP update, we have an additional delegation request from Sylvia Roberts. Item 6.3, which is delegations regarding historic Beauvert House and the associated report. We have an additional delegation request from Azad Goyat. Item 6.4, which is the Algoma University update. We have two additional delegation requests from Sylvia Roberts and Azad Goyat on that item.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That adds to our already long list of delegations, but that's great. It's always great to get the engagement from the community. Do any members have any further additions? I see none. I have a motion moved by Councillor Keenan to approve the agenda. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Next item is declaration of conflict of interest. Do any members have a declaration of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act for any matter to be considered on today's agenda? I see none. The clerk will so note in the minutes. Next item is consent. As part of our consent motion process, I will read each agenda item that is subject to the consent motion, and any member may verbally identify the item to be held for debate during the meeting. Any item that's not held for debate will be considered as part of the consent motion and voted for approval. I'll start by reading the agenda items. 8.2.1, staff report, request to begin procurement, professional, real estate advisory, negotiation, and brokerage services for a one-year period. I see no holds. That is in consent. 10.2.1, staff report, delegation, regional tax ratio setting 2023. No holds, in consent. 10.2.2, staff report, request to begin procurement, end user technology products, and desktop management services for a 3-year period. That is in consent. 10.2.3, staff report, 2023 temporary borrowing bylaw. Consent. 10.2.4 is held for delegation on this item. 10.4.1 also held for delegation on this item. 11.2.1 held for delegation on this item. 11.2.2 staff report, budget amendment, Gage Park ice track and refrigeration plant in Ward 3. Held by Councillor Palleschi. 12.3.1 minutes for Brampton Sports Hall of Fame Committee, December 1st, 2022. Consent. 15.1 open meeting exception under 239(2)(c) of the Municipal Act 2001, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, property acquisition matter. That is in consent. The clerk will now summarize the items held by members for consideration or not part of the consent motion prior to approval of this motion. Mr. Clerk, over to you.
Chair Santos, there's only one item held that was subject to the consent motion, item 11.2.2, held by Councillor Palleschi, the report on Gage Park ice track and refrigeration plant in Ward 3, with the remaining items that were cited to be considered for the consent motion or held in accordance with the Chair's direction.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. I have a motion moved by Councillor Brar to approve the consent motion. Is this a recorded vote? I don't think so. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Announcements. Our next item is 5.1, an announcement regarding the sad news about the recent passing of George Potsy Burrows. Regional Councillor Medeiros is the sponsor for this announcement. Councillor Medeiros, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Just very quickly, I know some members of council probably knew him better than myself, but I just wanted to, highlight the fact he passed away on January 8th. He was born 1918, and he played his first lacrosse game in Brampton, Ontario in 1926. And his last game was for the senior Brampton Excelsiors in 1947. Between the end of World War II, he served in the Royal Canadian Air Force, and in 1965, he helped launch the minor league and minor and OLA referee for lacrosse. He's a life member of the Brampton Excelsior Lacrosse Club, and he's been honored for his dedication to lacrosse by the City of Brampton, also by Toronto Rock, Brampton Sports Hall of Fame, and the Ontario Lacrosse Hall of Fame. And just finally, he has received the Queen's Golden Jubilee. He was an active member of the Legion for more than 60 years, and he did receive also Brampton Citizen of the Year in 1997 and received a key to the city on his 91st birthday. So truly, along with Bill Davis, if there's anyone that we can talk about in regard as Mr. Brampton, certainly George Potsy Burrows would be. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Burrows had led, and thank you for his contributions to the family and condolences to the family as well. Mayor Brown, you would like to say a few words?
Just briefly, obviously, he was an extraordinary resident of Brampton that was beloved by our city. I had the chance to meet him, I think, 4 or 5 years ago at the farmers market for the first time. I think anyone that meets him, met him, was inspired by his love for our city. And so I just wanted to note that it was a sad day for our city, but he's left an incredible legacy that will be remembered for a long time in our city. So I thank you, Councillor Medeiros, for adding this to the agenda.
Thank you so much, Mayor Brown. Next item of the agenda is public delegations, and before we begin our delegations on today's meeting, please note that we have now 15, Mr. Clerk? Yeah, so we have 12 items and 15 delegations on the agenda today. All delegations have been reminded by the clerk's office about council's 5-minute delegation time limit, which will be strictly enforced for delegation today to allow for an effective meeting. All delegations will be given a 1-minute remaining reminder, verbally or visually, so delegations can make their concluding remarks to the committee. After each delegation, there will be an opportunity for possible questions for clarification by committee members about your delegation. Please note that committee members have reviewed the agenda materials prior to the meeting, including your submissions and/or presentations, so we are all aware of your delegation content. Thank you so much, everyone, for your cooperation. The first delegation is 6.1, a delegation from Todd Kyle, CEO, and Michael Ben, Board Chair, Brampton Public Library, regarding introduction of Brampton Library's new strategic plan. Thank you so much and welcome, Todd and Michael. You have up to 5 minutes and the clock is just to my left.
Thank you. Good morning, Mayor Brown, members of council and staff. My name is Michael Ben, and I'm the Library Board Chair. And I'm pleased and excited to be here today to present our new strategic plan. Next slide, please. As you can see from this slide, the library started its journey in the development of a new plan in January of 2022. A diverse group of library stakeholders were engaged, including staff, the library board, community agencies, school boards, and post-secondary schools. learning agencies, the business community, faith groups, and Brampton residents. After many engagement sessions and workshops, the library board were pleased to approve the new strategic plan at its October 25 board meeting. Next slide, please. During the journey and engagement with library stakeholders, we heard from stakeholders about the current state of the library and community, and then the opportunities for the future role of the library. Our consultation achieved survey responses from over 1,000 residents, 3 focus group sessions, and over 50 stakeholders, and key interviews with a diverse group of community leaders. Next slide, please. We learned a lot from our engagement. We know that the library is a key member of the community, performing at a high level, and that the community values our staff and the various services offered. But I would like to focus on 2 bullet points that are highlighted there. 1, Brampton community needs are outpacing the library's current supports and services, especially in response to the growing size and diversity of the city. 2, as we move forward, the library must engage with community members and partners in order to meet the needs of the community. And now I would like to pass it over to Todd Kyle, the library CEO, who will review the library mission and strategy.
Thank you, Michael. Next slide, please. So through the process that Mr. Ben described, this is what the library is presenting as its strategic plan. Our new vision is inspiring connections. Our mission is to build an inclusive community by inspiring learning, literacy, and social cohesion. And our values are creativity, curiosity, collaboration, community, and connection. Next slide, please. The strategic directions that the library will focus on over the next 5 years include becoming known as the place for discovery, growing our capacity in response to community needs, building social cohesion by providing equitable and inclusive services, driving our leadership by reflecting the community's diversity, and emerging as the community's top choice for partnership. Next slide, please. What might some of these mean in a practical sense? So some of the things that we are considering that may happen over the next 5 years. In particular, I would note under becoming known as the place for discovery is the development of the Center for Innovation in downtown Brampton, including a new library branch. Under growing capacity in response to community needs, we are currently working on expanding services at the Gore Meadows, South Fletchers, and Southwest branches, and looking to expand our footprint in general. And under building social cohesion, our efforts will focus on fundraising in order to expand equitable services such as our device lending program. Next slide, please. So the next steps, of course, today is the presentation to council, and the next steps after that will include community and stakeholder communication. We do have brochures and electronic stuff coming out soon, as well as the development of objectives and key results for the first year. Next slide, please. So thank you very much for your support, and we are present if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Todd and Michael, and congratulations for hitting the 5-minute mark. Way to set an example for everybody else. I have a question from Councillor Brar to the delegation.
Yes. Thank you so much, Michael and Todd. Being on the library committee, we understand there's a lot of things that need to be, we need to engage in the community to further better our library system. But thank you for presenting that. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Brar. Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the delegation. Michael, it's been a long time since we were first on the board together, and congratulations on your chairmanship. I think what I'd like to say is over the next 4 years, and starting with this term, I think a lot of things are going to change, and there's going to be a lot more support and collaboration between, the city and the library. In particular, new infrastructure that's popping up throughout the city of Brampton. So I'm excited about this upcoming term, especially with respect to the library. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have a motion from Councillor Brar to receive the delegation. Anyone opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Thank you so much for coming today. Our next delegation is regarding the update on Queen Street Highway 7 Bus Rapid Transit Project. We have Marcy Birchfield, VP Planning and Development, and Joseph Ehrlich, Director of Project Planning Metrolinx, and Chris Drew on behalf of the Drew family, Brampton residents. And I believe we added another, Sylvia Roberts as well, has been added to that delegation. And we have a related staff report, which we will deal with in agenda order later on later on in the agenda. So first we'll start with Marcy and Joseph. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marcy Birchfield. I'm Vice President of Transit Planning at Metrolinx, and I want to thank Council for giving me and my team the opportunity to share information on the planning work that we will be undertaking for Queen Street and Highway 7 BRT project. The project is an important east-west transit connection in the region. We know that Brampton has been a transit success story, with ridership on Zoom experiencing over 155% growth over the past decade, and rapidly recovering from ridership hits that many transit operators experienced during the pandemic. The BRT project will further support that success, with the City of Brampton focused on to grow by 60%, with over 350 additional people and over 150 new jobs by 2051. Queen Street and Highway 7 BRT will support more affordable and accessible mobility options for people who live and work in Brampton. I will hand it over now to my colleague Joseph Ehrlich, Director of Project Planning at Metrolinx, to provide more details on the project. Joseph, over to you.
Great. Thank you, Marcy, and good morning. If we go to slide 7, you will see the overview of the project. So it's a 24-kilometer study area going from the western limits of the Viva BRT in York Region along Queen Street in Brampton through Bramalea, the center or downtown of Brampton, to Mississauga Road. This connects a lot of destinations. So there's the downtown Brampton Transit Hub and the GO station there. There's Vaughan Metropolitan Center and the subway at the eastern end, as well as connections to York University. So this is really already used and will continue to be used by people going to work, going to school, going to other types of destinations and trip purposes. If we go to slide 11, the last time we came to council about 2 years ago was when we released the initial business case, which really looked at the corridor and looked at certain investment options to recommend a preferred investment option for further refinement and design. That document was released in 2020 and is available on our website for reference. On slide 12, to recap the initial business case, we looked at 3 service options and 3 infrastructure scenarios, and recommended 2 of those service options combined with a center median busway as the infrastructure scenario. And on the subject of center median busway, what we were really looking at for further study was either converting, so keeping the existing road width and converting 1 lane of traffic in each direction to transit only, or widening the road by adding a transit-only lane, except in the downtown Brampton area where we do not have the space to do that. On the next slide, a preliminary design business case really sort of takes the concepts identified in the initial business case and evaluates the costs and benefits based on more detailed design, really looking at the local context sort of segment by segment along the corridor, as well as environmental studies. This happens in parallel with the environmental assessment process, and we commenced this phase of work in May 2022. So on the next slide, our goal for this phase of work is to really plan and design the enhanced transit corridor to support this regional connectivity and mobility. And through that, we're advancing the preliminary design, the environmental assessment process through our TPAP, as well as a preliminary design business case. On the next slide, you'll...
Joseph,
Sorry?
you have 1 minute.
Great. So on the next slide, you will see the schedule. Again, we kicked off this work in 2022 to look at the goals and objectives and develop a long list of design options. We are going to the public for our first of 3 engagements in this phase of work right now to really get feedback on the list and to understand the public input here. We are holding a public information center on our website from January 23rd to February 3rd. This is on the next slide. And I please encourage you and your constituents to attend the virtual live meeting on January 26th from 7 to 8 p.m. We are really looking for public feedback on conceptual design, the options, understanding what the best performing corridor is. And we will be coming back to the public in fall 2023 with an update. To conclude, contact information is located on this slide, and thank you for the opportunity to talk about this project.
Thank you so much. And just a little bit slightly over, but that's okay. We have a question from Councillor Vicente.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks to Metrolinx for bringing this for council's information for the public to be able to know more about this very exciting project. When you do a business case like this, do you also provide insight on the economic benefits to the city? Is there a measurement for that we can expect to see?
So from an economic benefits perspective, the economic case, the business case, doesn't sort of look at it per stakeholder. It's really the benefits to society as a whole.
Okay. And through you, Madam Chair, when the province looks at funding projects like this, they tend to prioritize based on the need. And with respect to the city of Brampton, we all know very well that with the pandemic, ridership at all transit agencies dropped considerably, but ours is now back up 160%. Would the province, looking at the need and the usage here in the city of Brampton, be willing to prioritize a project like this and ensure that we get it funded and shovels in the ground quicker than other projects, perhaps?
Thank you, Councillor. So I would say we're focused on the planning and design work right now, and so any funding decisions has to be a direction of the province. But we are committed to advancing the planning work for this to be shovel ready when that decision is made.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Councillor Vicente, and thank you for your delegation. We'll receive all the delegations at the end, Mr. Clerk, if that's okay. Our next delegation is from Chris Drew on behalf of the Drew family, Brampton residents. Chris, you have the floor. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, I just wanted to do a quick sound check. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris. First of all, to council and all the delegates, Happy New Year. Sorry I couldn't be there in person, but a member of my household might be COVID positive, so I just want to keep everyone safe and do this virtual. So thank you for accommodating me, and thank you to the clerk's office. And I just want to highlight from the perspective of transit riders, my family are transit riders, how exciting and positive and monumental that this project and this news that we're receiving today and the upcoming meeting on January 26th, which I encourage everyone to attend, is for Brampton. My family has lived in Brampton for over 40 years. I have many memories as a kid taking the 77 bus before it became Zoom in the 1990s from Bramalea to Thornhill to visit my grandparents. And this is extremely exciting. So I just wanted to mention that. The profile picture behind me is actually Queen Street. You can see lots of people, probably a lot of Wards 9 and 10 constituents waiting on the Zoom bus, and you can see the sea of traffic and congestion. Some are behind all of those trucks, some are behind all those cars. There is a bus. But the exciting prospect of this project is that we can extract those buses from the traffic congestion. And that really improves the quality of life for residents, for transit riders, and the overall experience. Place yourself where those folks are in that Zoom station and how demoralizing, depressing it is to see your bus far in the distance absolutely stuck behind traffic congestion. Well, the exciting prospect of this project is it's going to, again, extract those buses out of the congestion and give the buses its own dedicated space for much of the corridor. That's extremely exciting. That brings a lot of hope and positivity for those transit riders, and I think just gives them a better feeling about being a resident, that they're actually being taken into consideration. You know, sometimes in society, there's a lot of talk about maybe a new expressway or a new highway, and how much travel time that could save potentially. Well, we don't hear enough about that for transit riders. So the exciting thing about this project is it's actually going to save transit riders time. That's more time they can have with their families to get to work on time in a consistent and frequent way. So this project is part of a networked transit plan for Brampton. So it's going to connect to a Main Street LRT. It's going to connect to Brampton GO, obviously, and lots of north-south transit routes. So for example, if you're a Wards 9, 2, and 6 constituent in Brampton West and you work at the airport, you can take Queen Street BRT to Airport Road or another road like Bramalea to get to the airport and your job faster. So that's extremely exciting. So my family is extremely supportive of this project. It is a networked project that will help the network effect. I really want to thank Brampton staff and Metrolinx staff for all of their hard work. There's a lot more work to do. I don't think the public realizes how much work and design and analysis and data collection and meetings and Zoom meetings like this or WebEx meetings go into these projects. So a big thank you to staff for all of their really hard work on this project. And finally, to some of the new members of council, first of all, congratulations to all elected and re-elected councillors. But to the new councillors, Councillor Tor, I know we've spoken a lot about transit, so that's going to be an important perspective to have on council. Councillor Power, my family lives in Bramalea, so they're very passionate about Chinguacousy Park and all the trails, and I know that those parks and amenities in Bramalea are really important for you as well. Councillor Keenan, my brother's been a chef for almost 15 years, so he's very happy that someone in Brampton Council has hospitality experience, so welcome to council. And finally, Councillor Brar, my aunt was a nurse for 40 years and unfortunately just recently passed away. So I wish I could have told her that there's a nurse on council, someone with healthcare experience, because she would be absolutely thrilled. So congratulations, and I know your perspective is going to be really helpful. So finally, this is a networked project because it connects so many lines. It's long overdue, and I've got actually some friends in Vaughan who are excited to use it. They're using transit right now, but they're even more excited to use dedicated lanes. And maybe in terms of Councillor Fasante's question about economic development, we can invite them to Councillor Medeiros' favorite Portuguese-Canadian restaurant in the future. So thank you again, and really look forward to riding the future Queen Street Highway 7 bus rapid transit project.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's always a pleasure to have you delegate to council. Mayor Brown, a couple of questions.
Yeah, just very briefly, Chris, I just want to say that we're equally excited about the Queen Street Highway 7 BRT project, and although you may not live in Brampton, I just want to acknowledge I appreciate your love for our city. I know your family still lives here, and I know we get regular notes from you on any new transit fund that is set up or any new idea or initiative for public transit, and so your passion for public transit is appreciated. And if I recall, I think you even got married on public transit as a symbol of your affection for public transit. So Chris, thank you for the constant input and advice, and the city is stronger when you've got residents like yourself who are so passionate about the progress of our public transit system. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thanks, Mayor Brown.
Thank you so much, Mayor Brown. And we have, and Chris, we have one final delegation on this item, which is from Sylvia Roberts. Welcome, Sylvia. Happy New Year. It's good to see you.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Roberts. Happy New Year. Hopefully you've all enjoyed your winter holidays. As numerous members of council can attest, this has been one of the projects I've been most passionate about, especially Councillor Singh. Because of how much of the city it touches, it's the most transformational. I believe planning has at least tens of thousands of projects that are currently in the application pipeline and tens of thousands more that are just in the next couple of years. We also have a planning for a BRT along Steeles, which is just beginning the early phases. Depending on how you do the planning for this, if you actually acquire the staff to do the Queen Street BRT, a lot of that staff can be moved on to the Steeles BRT, which will allow you to do much better costing, deliver projects more on time, on budget, because the city knows what it's doing. If you go all in on consultants, then you've learned nothing from this, because you physically don't have the in-house capacity to do that, because you're just hiring another batch of consultants and you don't learn that institutional knowledge. The 2051 transportation plan has a priority bus / BRT thing north of downtown along here Ontario up to Orangeville. And so after the Steeles BRT, it could move to that, or with the huge developments proposed at Heritage Heights, a Beauvert BRT. So if you acquire the staff, you could keep them busy conceivably for the next 20 years, which makes it worth doing that as opposed to paying consultants 4, 5, 6 times for exactly the same work. There are so lots of benefits from this, lots of potential. There are some problem spots. We've got some in order to really take advantage of this, we have to do planning ahead of time. We have done some planning. We're currently working on planning for a postage stamp portion of the downtown. And we also have worked on a 2-kilometer stretch of Queen Street from the Etobicoke Creek to the 410, which, if you're being extremely generous, is a quarter of the distance. And it all has to be redone because none of this accounted for the population growth coming. And that is a big issue. When you look at how the city has been doing the planning, so for example, tomorrow night, we have an open house for the MTSA. This is, as far as I know, this is a city-run event as part of our official plan. It's for Bramalea, for the stations east of the 410 to Bramalea Road. And it is being held at Century Gardens, at Vaughan and Rutherford, which actually has quite poor transit access. And I know this because I have been to a transit thing at that place, and Alex was there. And the buses run every 45 minutes. Meanwhile, the Bramalea Civic Center is actually in the MTSA area, and it's right next to a bus terminal, and it would make a great location. If you're a resident of Bramalea, this location is actually very difficult to get to. How would you feel if they're like, yeah, we're going to go hold it at Cassie Campbell's? Like, would that be appropriate for residents of Ward 3? Or if you're holding something for Ward 2, they're like, we're gonna hold it at the Susan Fennell place. So it's like, this doesn't make any sense. But this has been a consistent issue with planning, especially for Bramalea, where the city is like, why should we hold it anywhere near the relevant area? Why should it be transit accessible? I know it's not the city deliberately trying to this because I've interacted a lot with the city, but this is stuff that we really need to plan for. There needs to be an actual process in place because it's pretty clear thank you for the 1-minute notice. It's pretty clear that we're not doing planning to making sure that the consultations, for example, are in the relevant areas. They should be where it's accessible to the residents. So overall, the city needs to look at having in-house staff for the Queen Street BRT, because a lot of those staff can carry over to the Steeles BRT, which we're probably going to want to get working on before we've even fully cut the ribbons on opening the Queen Street BRT. And the city also needs to make sure that in the future, staff knows that they need to make sure if you're holding an open house, the open houses should actually be near the areas that are being affected. And having Century Gardens as the location for Bramalea stuff, it just doesn't cut it. Thank you. That's my delegation.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. There are no questions from members of council, but we do need to receive all 3 delegations from Marcy Birchfield and Joseph Ehrlich, Chris Drew, as well as Sylvia Roberts. A motion from Councillor Singh to receive all 3 delegations. Anyone opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Our next set of delegations is 6.3, a delegation from Michael Avis, Chairman, and Joanne Warren, Board Member, the Friends of Historic Beauvert House, regarding the historic Beauvert House. And I believe we have one more added one, Mr. Clerk, or is that it?
Through you, Chair Santos, Azad Goyette was added at the beginning of the agenda for this and another 6.4. He's since advised that he is preoccupied with something else urgent,
Okay.
so he's not delegating.
Okay, so we have Michael Avis and Joanne Warren for your delegation. Thank you and welcome.
Good morning, Mayor Brown and Madam Chair, members of City Council and City staff. A special word of congratulations to our newly elected councillors. My name is Michael Avis, and it has been an honor for me to serve on the board of Historic Beauvais House for the past 25 years. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the board, and in fact every member of Historic Beauvais House volunteer group, commonly referred to as Friends. While having been operating successfully with dedicated volunteers for 30 years, we welcome being informed that Mr. Carscallon has been asked to present how future governance may be implemented, thereby enhancing the overall operation of the site. We're only too happy to provide Mr. Carscallon with a very comprehensive breakdown of both the history of Historic Beauvais House and Friends, focusing on what we do at the museum and exactly how we do it. We naturally hope that the information we provided would enable Mr. Carscallon to accurately respond to Council's questions, which would in turn enable Council to make informed decisions regarding the future of the museum and the role that the Friends will play in that future. For those Council members who may not be aware, I hasten to add that the whole concept of the museum was in fact initiated by the volunteers who took it upon themselves to take a mid-Victorian farmhouse with 10 completely bare, vacant rooms, and over the years build and furnish a museum with a collection of both purchased and donated period-appropriate artifacts that are now valued somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000, with all purchased pieces paid for by the volunteers through their hard work and fundraising efforts. However, for many years, we have thought that Historic Beauvais House was underutilized. Your valuable historic site deserves more exposure and increased regular hours of operation beyond the current 3 afternoons a week. Even with free admission, our goal has always been to provide museum visitors with a unique, immersive, and individualized experience. Those limited hours, however, do not include our hugely popular day and evening sold-out special events. However, all of our efforts encompassing museum hours, special events, and educational programming, in fact, our whole operation is dependent on the availability of qualified volunteers and committed volunteers. Through our outreach programs, Friends have worked collaboratively over many years with the Brampton Historical Society, with the Brampton Heritage Board, bringing our collective knowledge and love of local history and heritage to a variety of groups, schools, seniors residences, probus clubs, service groups, libraries, Brampton Farmers Market, and Highland Heritage, held annually in the Bay Court of Brampton City Centre. Having said all that, Friends recognize there are limits to what we can accomplish as volunteers, and we certainly look forward to exploring a partnership with the city. We believe that we have been very successful in many ways surpassed our objectives. But at the same time, we realize that more can and should be accomplished with a more direct participation by the city. If you would indulge me and allow me a personal comment, speaking as the elder statesman of our volunteer group, I would be remiss if I did not express how immensely proud I am of every volunteer, present and past, plus sadly those we have lost along the way. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, I would like to think that if Marcy and William Beauvais were still with us, they too would be proud of what Friends have accomplished with their old farmhouse and the relocated Pendergast Log House, which are now both much loved and very valuable city heritage assets. Friends recently contacted our new city councillors, inviting them to visit the museum. However, here today, I would like to extend an invitation to any and all councillors and stress the obvious benefit and importance of a site visit. Although I'm not completely retired and still a working guy, my schedule is very flexible, and I will welcome giving you all a very personal tour of the site at your convenience. It will give me the opportunity to answer, hopefully, your many, many questions that an actual site visit, I'm sure, would prompt. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you today, and I will happily respond to any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Michael, for keeping to 5 minutes. Greatly appreciated.
All
Councillor Paleshi has some questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Michael, for coming to delegate. I'll take you up on that site visit. It has been a long time since I've been to the Bovaird House, so I'd love to come and have a tour. You said that you would, you're interested in more kind of the working relationship with the city of Brampton. What does that look like to you? How would you like to see the city more involved?
Yeah. Well, as I pointed out, Councillor, so we are certainly dependent on the availability of qualified volunteers. And we do encourage, and I say we operate basically with around 35, 38 volunteers. But we're limited as to how much we can do by the manpower, so to speak. So certainly by getting the city more involved and using with their resources or what have you, we think it could and should be expanded. How it actually worked to be decided, but we're sure something could be worked out.
There was a time, and I don't know if COVID kind of squashed this, but we used to have like a volunteer pool that we would call upon for various things throughout the city, and maybe that's an opportunity. But I've been thinking more about, you know, the Bovaird House and how can we have the ability to kind of push it and escalate it and get more people involved and interested. A curator, I think, is a great idea, or PAMA. PAMA, you know, PAMA does really great things in the city. It is a gem of the city of Brampton. So maybe that's an opportunity where we need to now think about getting involved with the region and see if PAMA can become involved with the Bovaird House.
Thank you very much, Councillor Paleshi.
I saw
Yeah,
Stephen.
Yeah. Commissioner of Planning.
Through the chair, just to echo some of Councillor Paleshi's comments, I met with Mr. Avis on Friday virtually, so it was nice to meet him in person today, and some other friends of or other colleagues of his from the Friends of the Bovaird House, and we did put out the idea of engaging with the region of Peel, simply because they have the expertise in the programming and operations of this type of facility, and certainly I think in consulting with staff, if we were to receive direction today from council to have conversations with the region to look at what type of arrangement could be had, similar to option 3 presented in the report, I think it's sort of in my recommendation to council that would be in the best interest of the city. And certainly if the Friends of the Bovaird House wish to engage in any kind of manner, it would be sort of oversight by both the city and the region through that type of service level agreement.
Yeah, and if that's halfway, like the full way maybe is you know, the curator's not ours. Maybe it is PAMA. Maybe the relationship moves more towards PAMA and the Bovaird House, even though the ownership of the land is ours, right? So maybe that's kind of, so it's not option 3 really, but I don't mind moving option 3 with a little bit of a twist to have that opportunity with the region, but I'm at council's or committee's will. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Councillor Paleshi, and thank you, Michael, for the delegation. We'll probably deal with the report later on in the agenda today, and I'm, happy to look at any motion that comes to the table at that time. We have another delegation from Joanne Warren on the same agenda item. Joanne, welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Good morning, and thank you very much for your time and attention today. My name is Joanne Warren, and I'd like to speak to you about the Friends of Historic Bovaird House, a group of approximately 36 volunteers who have operated this beautiful historic site on behalf of the City of Brampton for over 30 years. Since the Friends took on the task of operating the site and house, they have painstakingly restored, furnished, and decorated both it and the Penricast Log House with authentic and period-appropriate artifacts and antiques, all of which have been donated to the City of Brampton, to create an accurate representation of the daily life of the pioneer families who once called them home. I joined the Friends as a volunteer in 2018. I was welcomed with open arms and have thoroughly enjoyed working with and getting to know each member during my time with them. I'm constantly impressed by and in awe of their knowledge, dedication, passion, and the energy and enthusiasm with which they approach all aspects of operating the site, as well as the fact that they do so not for personal gain of any kind, but because of their love of local history and a wish to pass that love on to others. Our ongoing volunteer recruitment efforts strive to reflect the diverse community of Brampton, and we continue to look for ways to encourage interest from the public. We've been very fortunate in having several new volunteers join us, even during the pandemic. Each member brings with them a unique perspective, as well as significant skill sets that add so much value to the daily operations of the site, as well as to the staging of annual free public events such as Doors Open, Bike the Creek, and Highlights on Heritage, and fundraising events like the Mother's Day Tea, Victorian Christmas Open House, and the Loaf and Ladle and Murder Mystery Dinners that have become so popular and regularly sell out each year. Among our volunteers are members who have completed their food handler certification, who are very knowledgeable of authentic pioneer meals and dishes from the mid-19th and early 20th centuries, who take charge of all food preparations for fundraising events. We also have talented artists and crafters who help create and maintain our period costumes and donate countless beautiful and distinctive items to be sold in our gift shop. One of our volunteers is a member of the Ontario Artist Blacksmith Association, who offers fascinating demonstrations on blacksmithing and has provided many beautiful pieces for the houses. Others is a board member of the Historical Lighting Society of Canada, whose expertise in early lighting history is a great help in acquiring and maintaining appropriate lighting for the houses and in making our Desserts by Lamplight such a beautiful event. Yet another is an assistant curator with a master's in museum sciences, who is a huge asset with inventory. Several of our volunteers are active and retired teachers and educators who provide valuable insight into the instructive aspect of our programming. Others are gifted amateur historians and researchers who have been able to put together not only the history of the property and families who lived on the site from the time of the original land grant, but the information required for the Indigenous land acknowledgement that is now proudly displayed for visitors inside the entrance to Bovaird House. Other volunteers work tirelessly in the gardens each year to create lush and beautiful landscapes, as well as to grow many different types of herbs and vegetables, just as the original inhabitants would have, which is donated to local food banks throughout the growing season. These are just a few examples of the amazing people I have had the privilege to volunteer with since joining the Friends. Each member, including myself, genuinely loves and takes pride in what we do. We strive to ensure that each visitor to the site, whether to enjoy an event or take a tour, receives a personal and unique experience. We at the Friends of Historic Bovaird House understand that our relationship with Brampton City Council must change and evolve. Our hope is that with a closer partnership, we can continue to enhance this beautiful historic site. Our only objective is to ensure the public's continued enjoyment and education of a well-loved and important City of Brampton asset, and we look forward to working with you to accomplish this goal. I'd like to conclude by taking this opportunity to invite each member of this committee to visit Historic Bovaird House and experience it for yourself. Please come and take a tour of the grounds and houses. I'm certain you'll be as impressed as I am. Thank you again very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Joanne, for the delegation. And I apologize, Councillor Medeiros. I believe you had some questions for either Michael or Joanne. Councillor Medeiros, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, through you, Chair. To Mr. Avis, and my apologies not being, that I couldn't be there in person. Mr. Avis, I in terms of your delegation, in terms of the history with the Bovaird House, I've always had, again, I've learned about the Bovaird House over the last several years, especially. I can't say that, previously I was fully aware of all the programming. I did see some of the advertising in terms of the tea events and so on. But if we were to say over the 30 years, there was a lot of volunteer hours given to, I guess, the city of Brampton on behalf of the Bovaird House. And, you know, speaking about those artifacts and so on, the purchases of everything that was there, was that all through fundraising? Was that through, you know, is that something that you guys collected, were they donated? And do you have an idea of how many volunteer hours over those 30 years? Did you guys ever keep sort of track of what the value possibly of all those hours were dedicated to the Bovaird House?
Well, thank you for the question. I wouldn't like to estimate the number of hours over 30 years that some of us have put in. But generally speaking, I think for the last few years we actually give to the city certainly well over 4,000 hours a year we spend doing what we do at the museum. I think was one of your questions about the furnishing of everything at the museum has either been donated, some items, and sometimes we get Bovaird items donated back, which are actually priceless. But the rest of the items, and some big, some small, a number of big ones, they're all purchased exclusively with the funds raised by the volunteers themselves.
Now, and kind of where I'm going with this too is because my understanding, you know, again, I don't know the numbers of how many people have gone through, but the amount of hours you've given to the city, the relationship that we've always had with the Bovaird House, you know, from my understanding with staff, we've never really had any negative issues. I think my understanding is how we can do things better, how we can make it more robust. But when the barn became sort of the $1 million ask and the $1 million cost price, can you just clarify, you know, for myself, this was never, you know, the price tag, is this something that the Friends of Bovaird fully understood? Was it the fact that, you know, understanding that you wanted to bring the barn, but there's other ways that maybe that are more economical to do that? Because I think a lot of us got stuck with the, you know, there was that sticker shock of $1 million. And sometimes people don't understand. And I myself, you know, I can't say that I know construction as well as some of my colleagues. But what was the Friends of Bovaird's reaction to sort of that the pricing and the costing of that?
Well, I think Friends' reaction was probably the reaction that most people should have had. It was just out of sight. I don't know where this figure came from, but certainly it's been passed around and I say promoted, but certainly was. We were flabbergasted when this kind of became part of the general discussion about the barn, and quite frankly, I don't know where it came from. I've got not suspicions, but ideas. But certainly, as we've learnt subsequently, of course, the price of resurrecting the barn would be considerably less than what was been touted 2, 3, 4 years ago.
Yeah, and thank you. And just my last question through you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Avis. Just, I guess, piggybacking on Councillor Peleshi's question, in terms of the type of relationship that the Friends of Bovaird would like to continue to have, I guess, with the city, because essentially it's almost, you know, what we're talking about is something I think that the Friends wanted in terms of, you know, having an agreement in place, all that stuff. So it's not something that the Friends of Bovaird stopped or was dragging on, or, you know, it wasn't something that the Friends of Bovaird ever opposed. The relationship evolved over those 30 years based on, you know, trust, based on a very good working relationship with the city. So, you know, as far as I know, there was never really, you know, the impetus to do something and have a more formalized relationship didn't come from a negative perspective. It was always from, you know, just an evolution that eventually we'll get it done, but there was always a good relationship with staff. Is that a fair articulation of the relationship?
I think so. I remember thinking, I've said this several times to our group, I remember when I first joined with Bovaird, I'm going back 25 years now, maybe a little more than that. And I remember thinking at the time when we're looking at the house and the significance of it, the historic significance, and thinking about Marcia Bover's conditions of the donation. I thought, right way back when, I thought, this place is just being underutilized. Now, we do the best we can with the volunteers that we have, and I'm always very conscious of overloading the volunteers. How many times have people come through the place and say, gee, why don't you do this event every week or every month or whatever? I say, we're at the mercy of how many volunteers we have, and I'm always very conscious of overloading the volunteers with too much work because they are volunteers. Overload them and it just becomes a job they don't get paid for, and so I'm always very conscious about what we load onto the volunteers. But certainly the suggestions that have been put forward this morning by Councillor Pellecci regarding a curator, I think that would be a very interesting idea. Being able to avail ourselves perhaps of some of the resources of PAMA would also be, on a more formal arrangement, would certainly be very more than beneficial.
Great. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Michael Avis and Joanne, for your delegation. We will deal with the report later on in the agenda. Thank you for your volunteer work and all of the volunteers who volunteer from across the city.
I'll pass along.
Okay. Motion moved by Councillor Power to receive the delegations. Anyone opposed? That motion carries. And before we go into this next round of delegations, I just wanted to acknowledge former Councillor Vicky Dillon, who is here today, or was here today. Did he leave? There you are. You are no stranger to our council chambers. Welcome back. It's wonderful to see you and all returning councillors who join us at our various meetings. Welcome. Happy New Year, Vicky. Our next round of delegations is 6.4 to 6.12, and they all have to deal with economic development. And so I'm also going to ask during this round for our Director of Economic Development to, if you can, please join us here on the front bench as we go through these very important delegations regarding the economic development progress within the city of Brampton. As well as Ines Rachid, Sector Manager, Innovation and Technologies, Economic Development Office, will be providing some opening remarks. Thank you, Ines. Welcome, and we are going to get your welcoming remarks and then have our delegations.
I'll be quick. I know that we don't have that much time. Good morning, Chair Santos, Mayor Brown, and Council. My name is Ines Rachid, and I'm the Interim Innovation and Tech Sector Manager with the Economic Development Office. One of the most exciting portfolios I get the privilege to work on is the Brampton Innovation District. I'm happy to be here today to introduce the Brampton Innovation District partners, as well as 3 exciting startup businesses that have graduated through the partners programming. They're all here today to present to you about their achievements in the 2022 calendar year. And start off.
Thank you so much, Ines. We have Craig Fowler, Vice President, Growth and External Relations from Algoma. Nice to see you, Craig. You have 5 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Mayor Brown, and Council, for the opportunity to provide an update and speak to you about the exciting things that are happening at Algoma University here in Brampton. We've been very busy over the past several months since we last provided an update, achieving milestones and continuing to invest in our Brampton operations and the Brampton community. There's quite a bit of information covered in these slides today, and I won't be able to go in detail, but I'm happy to provide questions, answer questions at the end. Next slide, please. We continue to grow our footprint in Brampton. We're right now renovating and just completing the renovations on 28 Main. A lot of people know that as the former CIBC building. We're beginning construction and renovations on 56 Queen Street to increase our overall footprint by 20,000 square feet since the last time we provided an update. There's renderings at the end of the presentation if people are interested. This number is actually, though, pretty small in comparison to the space that we will require as our growth continues on our track, which is about 365,000 square feet in the downtown core. In the past year, we've been investing in infrastructure towards our new programming that has resulted in major enrollment growth at Algoma University. We're creating more spaces for classrooms, student success services, flexible workstations to adapt to the new reality of the workforce. We continue to grow, and we're developing a master plan for our operations here in Brampton. We plan to include more state-of-the-art facilities so we can offer the best experience for our students and community. And we're also very excited to be undertaking options for new residences in the downtown core, food services, research and academic space, and much more. Next slide, please. It has been great to welcome people back in person to learning in downtown Brampton. My president was here in September to discuss that, and at that time she noted that we were looking at 3,000 students. Well, I'm here to tell you today, as of new semester, we are actually looking at 5,000 students right now in Brampton's downtown core. Living, educating, purchasing, acting. All you have to do is walk around the Market Square to see it. To put that into perspective with respect to domestic students, we've grown 170% in our domestic students since 2019-20. We've seen a 38% increase in domestic applications for our upcoming fall semester in 2023, and this is on top of a 45% increase that we saw in September 2021. We're also continuing to work with the Indigenous communities in Peel region on exploring opportunities to support Indigenous learners and adhere to our special mission. Algoma continues to deliver new and relevant programming and in-demand programming for our students at our Brampton campus. Beyond the programs that we're offering now, we're also looking at no fewer than 11 new programs, including 7 new master's programs that are going to be rolled out at the Brampton campus, and this is something we've been able to do now as a comprehensive university under our changes within status with the government. Next slide, please. Algoma is proud to be a continued partner and continue to revitalize both the downtown Brampton city as a whole and be a strong community partner to all things Brampton. We continue to support various initiatives throughout the city. Our domestic enrollment has increased, and we're thrilled to share that Algoma has awarded close to $270,000 to 115 students from the Peel region. These are scholarships and bursaries, and it does not include our students that are entering in January or just entered in January. We value our students and are committed to making post-secondary more accessible and more affordable for Peel residents and Peel students. We continue also to track our impact on Brampton, and we have been surpassing our goals year over year. The original presentation that we gave to council for the $7.3 million that council was kind enough to partner with us said that we were going to have a return on investment of $10.7 for every $1 invested in 2028. Well, the economic impact now is forecasting that that number will be 5 times higher, more than 5 times higher, at 58.2 by 2028. We continue to grow our staff, and Algoma continues to create more job opportunities in Brampton. We have hired 54 new staff and employees and faculty over the past year, bringing our number as of last September to 97, on track to what we're forecasting of 250 employees in downtown over the next several years. I'd like to thank our partners with the economic development. Your staff here are wonderful, and happy to take any questions.
Well done, thank you, Craig. We are excited about the expansion and growth in Algoma University, Councillor Vicente and I, in the area that we represent. Any questions from members of council regarding this delegation? I see none, and we will receive all the delegations at the end. Thank you so much, Craig. Our next delegation is 6.5 from Usha. Yes? Oh, I apologize. Sylvia Roberts first on this particular item regarding Algoma University. You have up to 5 minutes, Sylvia. Thank you.
Hello again. My name is Sylvia. I remember when President Vizima was in here asking for the money to go from 300 students to 500 and then 800. And I'm quite impressed by 5,000. That's quite a lot. I think the city was like, yeah, we're going to start a brand new university, but it seems that Algoma has functionally duplicated that in much less time. I do have some questions. So the city has constantly had an issue with student housing. You've doubled or tripled the number of students at this school? in just a single year. And my question is, where exactly are all of these students living, and how many are actually taking classes here? We have a severe housing crunch, and so I think it's a reason, and we've had constant issues with student housing, so I think it's something that Brampton City Council should be able to ask and get answers for. So the AG report said that in 2021-2022, Algoma had 3,500 students total between all three campuses. Now it's 5,000 at this campus. That's quite a bit, and even then, when it was about 1,750 at the Brampton campus, that was already the majority of their student body. At that point, the Auditor General mentioned that 90% of the Brampton campus's student body is international students. I believe when they had originally come here, they had promised that the goal was 60% domestic and 10% is, it might have changed in the last year, but that seems in the wrong direction. Hopefully they can provide an update on that. There's also a number of much more serious concerns that the city, as an organization that's put a bunch of money into Algoma, should be able to ask. Concerns raised by the Auditor General. The university does not track graduating international students to see if they stayed in this region and contributed to the economy. Hopefully they have some kind of answer that will be able to be furnished to the city, because that's kind of important for finding out what the return on human capital is. Another concern was how the international recruiting agents' incentives prioritized volume, not quality of students. So we've got students coming, but it's not clear based on that how well they are set up for success and how well they would work in our economy once they have graduated. Then there's also, Algoma did not have any expected oversight functions in place, including risk management, compliance, and internal audit, which is surprising for an organization of that size, and is also something that the city as an organization has put a fair bit of money into and a significant amount of support into, should be able to answer. I'm sure there's lots of great returns for the city, but there still needs to be accountability to the residents to ensure that the students that are coming will be set up for success and that they will be well behaved, and because Sheridan has been constantly blamed for international students, Sheridan's halted the growth in international students, while Algoma is dramatically increasing it. So the residents deserve to know this information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. The next delegation is 6.5 from Usha Srinivasan, Director, Brampton Venture Zone by Toronto Metropolitan University, regarding the Brampton Venture Zone update. Usha, welcome. Nice to see you again.
Thank you very much,
have 5
Madam
minutes.
Chair and Mayor Brown. I will request not to advance the slides. I'm just going to speak to the audience because it's very limited time. So as you know, Brampton Venture Zone is operated by TMU and funded by City of Brampton, and we opened our doors in September of 2020. We are a purpose-driven incubator, non-equity based incubator, and dedicated to working with early stage startups. We work in 5 specific industries. They're all relevant for Brampton. They are in community health and wellness, in smart city mobility and logistics, food sustainability, film, music and entertainment, and advanced manufacturing. It's all specifically chosen because of the strengths of Brampton. We have graduated about 21 companies to date in the health and wellness and logistics space. And impact-wise, I would say that those companies have created about 68 net new jobs. They have together 1.92 million in revenues. And non-dilutive capital is $786K, not including the $1 million that Scooty just closed with OCI. He will hear from Scooty, one of our companies, later on. And dilutive capital of $4.17 million, just to tell you in the couple of years of the impact these companies created. We opened our doors to 18 more companies, this time including food sustainability as a segment. And thank you, Councilor Tor and Santos, for greeting them yesterday and meeting with some of our companies. We appreciate that very much. And I also want to mention that out of the companies that have worked with us, about 16 of them are either born here and live here, or are currently working actively with industry partners that we have brought on board. So that's the little impact we've created in the short time that we've been here. So I will stop at that and be open to questions so that conserving my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Usha. And it was lovely to see the new cohort yesterday, for everything from medical sciences to food to food manufacturing, as well as advanced technology. It was really incredible to see them all. Councillor Tour has a few questions. Councillor Tour.
Thank you for your delegation, Usha. It was wonderful to be there last evening, and it makes it heartful to see a room full of entrepreneurs that are starting up and choosing to do that in Brampton. That was the vision that many people had years ago, to think that one day we would see this in Brampton. So it's amazing to actually see it in front of us. Just a question out of curiosity and just for information for everybody else as well. So how does the Venture Zone select startups, or how do startups come in-house into the Venture
Awesome.
Zone?
Thank you for asking that question. So first is when we engage with a particular industry sector, we actually work with them in a very intimate way. We call it the problem lab to find out the kind of problem areas that they are facing as a sector, or even as an individual, as a company. And then we use that as a information source to go and solicit startups from the ecosystem. So our team works extremely hard in making direct phone calls, through finding companies through Crunchbase, doing paid campaigns to get the companies going. Just this particular cohort that joined, I think the team said we've spent 300 hours on phone call or in-person meetings to find the companies, and about 80 companies that applied. Of that, 18 were chosen. So it does take a long time, a few months of work, for us to get the best to Brampton. And so hopefully that explains the process.
No, that does perfectly. Thank you for that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Usha, for the update. There is so much happening in the Innovation District, including the Brampton Venture Zone. And speaking of which, our next delegation is from Pam Banks, Executive Director, Altitude Accelerator, regarding the Altitude Accelerator update. Both Councillor Tour and myself also had the pleasure of touring the Altitude Accelerator last month, and was very pleased to see the progress as well. So Pam, you have 5 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good morning, Mayor Brown and members of council. I'm pleased to be here, and I'd like to introduce Stephen Benet from Bearskin Par, and also a member of our board of directors who's joining me here today. Altitude Accelerator was formerly known as the RIC Center, the Research Innovation Commercialization Center. We moved to Brampton in fall of 2020, and we now call the Brampton Innovation District home. I'm going to ask you to advance to the next slide. We provide training, mentoring, and tech innovators with commercialization support and technology, and we have expertise in both clean tech and investor readiness. Next slide, please. Last year, we registered over 100 new clients. We graduated 16 companies from our incubator program, and we also graduated 12 companies from our investor readiness program. Next slide, please. We do have a broad portfolio of companies. We have over 500 companies from all industry sectors. We are part of the province's innovation network of centers similar to ours across the province. So we do support companies from all sectors. Our companies over time have raised over $575 million in total funding, $421 million in revenue, and have created over 2,500 new jobs. And this is all for the period, actually not for 2020, but this is over our period over the last 10 years. In supporting these companies, we have over 80 advisors, and these 80 advisors are from all industry sectors, and they support us in a volunteer capacity because they're excited about working with entrepreneurs. And they support founders through one-on-one workshops as well as our champion panels. And one of the areas that we know is critically important to our founders is access to financing. So one of the areas that we do work in is investor readiness. And one of the initiatives that we're currently working on, and we hope to be able to come back in 2023 with more detailed information, is on the launch of a new angel group. So we have been working very closely with our partners from Angel Investing Ontario and our community partners to bring together a group of enthusiasts that are willing and interested in supporting sort of our next generation of entrepreneurs. And I hope that members of council are able to join us for a special event on Friday, January 27th, a meeting for Angels prospects to come together to learn more about our initiative. Next slide, please. I just want to acknowledge it takes a community to raise a startup. We are proud to work with members of our innovation district, our community partners, as well as business service companies to provide value-added support to companies. Now, I know I have a couple of extra remaining minutes in my presentation, and I'd like to share a short video with you. And I think this really helps understand how we work with companies. If the minutes are ticking back too quickly, I can save that. I think it's shared with everybody, and I'm happy to go to questions if anyone has any questions.
We're going to play the video.
My name is Michael Peckgrave, and I am one of the co-founders of CleanAir.ai. We manufacture a smart filter platform that brings together best-in-class air quality performance, and on the smart side, a completely revolutionary facility maintenance experience through our smart filter platform.
CleanAir.ai has a fantastic opportunity to develop and market around the world. I believe Canada has a fantastic competitive advantage in the clean tech space. And the Altitude Accelerator is well positioned to give technologies and people the opportunity to export and explore the world as a marketplace. My name is James Sproula, and I'm an entrepreneur in residence at the Altitude Accelerator.
James is pretty much our coach. You can come to him with absolutely anything, a trying time or any objectives or obstacles in our way. Literally, James has been there, and there's no better person to turn to in these challenging times or how to navigate a business situation than somebody who's actually been through these situations many, many times over. When we look to James and let him know this is where we're at with our solution, this is what we're thinking about developing, a light bulb, I think, went off in James's head, and it was just like, I think I have a contact that could really help you guys out with your development.
To me, it's all about relationships. Often where I'm called on to try to help is managing the relationships. I made the original introduction of the founders of CleanAir.ai to their manufacturing partner, and I like to think I've been the biggest help to them in helping them with relationship management and relationship development. To me, it's a real compliment when they develop a relationship with someone I introduced them to and do business together.
It was no more perfect of a time that introduction could have happened, because we were in that initial stage kind of figuring out what the technology could be and what it could look like, and that completely changed the trajectory of our company and the solution that we're currently commercialized and have made available to the market. There's really no Clean Air, there's no Michael as an entrepreneur without Altitude, because they've been a part of our journey literally since the very beginning.
We provide a fantastic opportunity for new and young companies and technologies to get to market. The Altitude Accelerator is well positioned to give you tools to help yourself.
Good cameo of City Hall.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your delegation. I believe there's a question from Councillor Tour as well.
Thank you for your delegation and that lovely video. Just looking at the numbers that you shared with us, those are really good numbers that we see over the last 10 years. Do you have some metrics more specific to Brampton as well on the impact that you've had in Brampton? And that slide deck with all the different organizations that you're partnered up with across the board, if you can give us some examples of organizations that are in Brampton as well.
Sure. So from an impact perspective, we're in the process of doing our survey. So we are part of the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation and Trade. So they actually execute the survey with the Innovation Network partners. So our survey launched on Monday. So I hope sometime over the course of 2023, I can come back with some of those impact numbers for over the past 18 months or so. From a partner perspective, we do work really closely with our Innovation District partners. And I can tell you, being in this environment and being down the street, across the street from some of the different players has been incredibly important and valuable to us. For example, Algoma spoke this morning. We do work really closely with Algoma University. So we connect students in some of their programs to some of our founders. So pre-revenue early stage companies are always open to working with students with ideas. So it's part of an actual course that puts the students together almost like in a capstone project, incredibly valuable to the students, incredibly valuable to the entrepreneurs. We also work closely with the Brampton Entrepreneur Center. Jointly, we do events around getting started and how to evaluate your business model. Some of the companies that have been through the RBZ program also have worked with Altitude Accelerator in some capacity, or lots of times clients cross paths and working with all the Innovation District partners. Most recently, we have put together a program with the Brampton Board of Trade to do some outreach to industry around ESG and climate change. So I hope that's going to be an ongoing sort of project initiative, and excited where that could lead.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for your delegation and your update.
Okay, thank you.
Our next delegation is 6.7 from Charles Finley, Founding Executive Director, Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst at TMU, regarding Cybersecure Catalyst update. Charles, it's always lovely to see you. Welcome. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Mayor Brown, councillors, staff. It is a pleasure to speak to you about the progress of the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst in the last number of years. As you know, the Catalyst is a national center for cybersecurity activities across many domains. It was founded in Brampton, headquartered in Brampton in 2019 in partnership with the City of Brampton, Rogers Communications, RBC, the Government of Canada, and Toronto Metropolitan University. I'll go to the next slide. The Catalyst is now, I think safe to say, one of Canada's key centers for cybersecurity activities across many domains, and I encourage all of you and all of us to consider this partnership as positioning Brampton at the very center of cybersecurity activities nationally. Brampton is recognized through its partnership with the Catalyst as one of Canada's most important hubs for collaboration and innovation in cybersecurity. The center, the home of Canada's largest workforce training program in cybersecurity, the home of Canada's largest commercial accelerator program in cybersecurity, and the home of the Catalyst Cyber Range just down the street at 1 Nelson. So through the partnership with the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst and through our work with the Innovation District, Brampton is at the center of cybersecurity nationally. I'll go to the next slide, please. Just to double click on a couple of our major programs to provide you with a little bit of context. Out of Brampton, we run the largest workforce training program in cybersecurity in Canada. We have graduated 468 learners to date. We target the graduation of 650 learners by the end of next year. These learners are entering the workforce at an incredibly important moment. Just in the last 3 months, Sobeys was attacked. LCBO was attacked. We saw the attack on Sick Kids Hospital. So Brampton is participating in something that's at the very center of our social and economic life in Canada. If we could go to the next slide, please. Graduates from the program are currently working at 105 different organizations across the public and private sectors in Canada, including many of the most important organizations in the country, and you see them there. So the network, the Brampton impact, is alive with these learners. If we could go to the next slide, please. I want to talk just for a second about our accelerator program. This is the largest commercial accelerator program in the country, specifically designed for cybersecurity startups and scale-ups. It is safe to say that any company in the country that is growing in cybersecurity or related technologies comes to Brampton now. to participate in this accelerator program. We've had 39 companies graduate to date. Another 7 companies are currently in the program. The numbers are before you in terms of the impact of the program. It is becoming a must-stop for cybersecurity companies that are growing and developing economic development in Brampton and across the country. If we could go to the next slide, please. These are the logos of all the companies that have participated in our program. There are 46 of these companies. They cover the waterfront, if you like, in terms of all the different areas of cybersecurity, including pieces like artificial intelligence. We've seen ChatGPT just before the winter break emerge as a major issue in our economy and our society. AI is an important piece here. Quantum computing is an important piece here. We have network security, software security, endpoint security, human-centric cybersecurity. We have training organizations in cybersecurity. So an enormous breadth of companies operating across the cybersecurity field. Just make one more important point. Cybersecurity is one of the fastest growing economic sectors in the world. Brampton is one of the key hubs in Canada through the partnership with the Catalyst. There's an opportunity for Brampton to play internationally as a center for cybersecurity. And the opportunity in terms of economic development for this city, for this community, in respective opportunities across the country and around the world are right before us. Final slide, please. These are just some pictures I'll leave you with of some of the programming that's happened right here in Brampton downstairs and at our One Nelson location. Just to make a quick point, upper right-hand corner, the MasterCard Emerging Leaders Cyber Initiative, a key initiative for women cybersecurity executives in Canada. That picture is taken right here in Brampton. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Charles, for the delegation and the update. Councillor Tour has a couple of questions. Please go ahead, Councillor Tour.
Thank you again for this wonderful delegation. Sorry, I'm going to be asking a lot of questions here, so please bear with me. Regarding the Catalyst, like you mentioned, that Brampton has this opportunity to be a global player when it comes to cybersecurity, and that opportunity is in front of us. But can you tell us how we can capitalize on this opportunity, how we can act on this so that we can actually become the global player?
So I think it's a terrific question. And I think the work that the economic development team is doing here is very much aligned with that. We travel internationally together to talk about Brampton and to talk about inbound economic development in Brampton. We were just in New York. When I say we, I mean ourselves. We're in New York talking about Brampton and the opportunity to bring companies in cybersecurity to Brampton. I travel to Israel at the end of the month, and I'll be talking about Brampton as a center for cybersecurity internationally. So the opportunity is, because of the workforce that we're developing and because of the ecosystem of companies that are emerging in cybersecurity, to bring inbound economic development in cybersecurity into Brampton and have more companies growing here, more companies adding to economic development in this city.
Okay, and I saw a slide there quickly that spoke about patents that are coming out of the Catalyst program here. So those patents are, you could say those patents are in Brampton-based companies, Brampton startups for cybersecurity?
A number of them are. So there's a number of different pieces. We are extremely proud of our work with Brampton and companies in Brampton and learners in Brampton. We have specific training programs for Peel region. We have companies in the accelerator from Brampton. But one of our key objectives is also to make Brampton the center of the national cybersecurity conversation and to bring companies into Brampton and learners into Brampton. The picture that I showed you of the MasterCard Emerging Leaders Cyber Initiative, those women executives are from across the country, and they're coming to Brampton to train in cybersecurity. So, Councillor, your point is a very powerful one. We are focused on driving economic development in Brampton, but we're also focused on situating Brampton at the center of the country in terms of cybersecurity and bringing learners, companies, executives to Brampton to engage in cybersecurity work.
And also because cybersecurity is like this new and emerging space, and it's not a tangible one. So how do you measure the success of your startups?
It's a very good question. We have a number of usual metrics. So as you described, the intellectual property, patents, increase in employment, increase in recurring revenue, all of the usual metrics that you would use to gauge the success of a company as it emerges, money raised, as it emerges out of its startup phase into the into its scale-up phase and beyond. So we have rigorous metrics that watch that. But you're right. Cybersecurity is a rapidly growing domain, and there are intangibles. One of the key pieces about Catalyst at Brampton is bringing together all of these different streams, if you like, the startup stream, the training stream, to create those connections and networks between companies and individuals that drive the intangible benefits and hopefully grow economic development for the city.
Okay, and one last thing, partly question, partly a suggestion. When we see every day on the news, we see cybersecurity breaches. Like you mentioned, you give some really good examples, that most recent examples, and we see cybersecurity experts talk about it on national TV at a national stage. I would love to see those folks being from Brampton, or companies that are from Brampton that are on national television and having that conversation, because then it's great that we talk about it in Brampton internally, that we are the center of excellence for this. But I would want all of Canada to know that. So the next time, hopefully, that we see something on the news related to cybersecurity, would love to see that it's a startup from Brampton that's on TV talking about it, or an expert from Brampton that's on TV talking about it, because that's the kind of good news stories that we need for Brampton.
Yes, that's very well received. I do a number of media pieces around cybersecurity. I always talk about the Catalyst at Brampton. And your point is a very powerful one. We'll continue to put that message out there and to invite our entrepreneurs and others to talk about their solutions. I think that's a very important point.
Perfect. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Councillor Tour. And just to piggyback off of what you had said about putting Brampton on the national stage when it comes to things like this and some of the other things we're doing, FCM is going to be in Toronto in May, at the end of May. It would be great for us to showcase some of the work, especially on cybersecurity, that we're doing in the city of Brampton at FCM. Thank you very much, Charles. Our next delegation is 6.8 from Sunil Sharma, Managing Director of Toronto Founder Institute Incorporated, Brampton and Founder Institute Partnership. Thank you so much, Sunil. You have up to 5 minutes. Welcome.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Just making sure you can hear my audio.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. All right, so Your Worship, City Council, great to meet you. Sorry, I'm not there in person today. I just had to fly to New York City this morning, so I'm here in New York. I'll start by introducing myself. I'm the Managing Director of Techstars, which is one of the world's largest tech accelerators and venture capital funds. We have a management off-site meeting here in New York this week. I'm also the co-host of the Collision Conference, which is the big tech event that will be happening again in Toronto in June, and we once again will be welcoming an incredible delegation from Brampton. But what I'm here to talk about is the Founder Institute, which is the world's largest pre-accelerator. So this is a foundational accelerator for aspiring entrepreneurs and tech founders. It sits before a tech investment fund like a Techstars, and it really serves as an incredible source of deal flow to other investors or to other programs, like we just heard from some of the co-presenters here just now. In fact, some of the logos I saw on Charles's slides and some of the other slides are Founder Institute alumni. So I'll go to the next slide. Founder Institute is an incredibly global pre-accelerator, and it's also incredibly large. It's created more than 5,200 new tech startups around the world. And these companies who have been able to finish this very rigorous 3-month accelerator generally are well positioned for future success, raising capital, creating a lot of jobs, and a lot of enterprise value. The small green dots you see on the slide are actually chapters of where Founder Institute are operating. I happen to just have the privilege of running the one in the GTA and Waterloo corridor, so from Waterloo to Toronto and everything in between, and I've been doing that for almost 10 years. Sorry, these screens are going down. I'll go to the next slide. So just to show you our footprint in Canada, we've graduated more than 300 new startups. And I would like to draw attention to the fact that for every startup that we graduate, about 3 do not graduate. And that's an interesting outcome of Founder Institute because it's a very rigorous 3-month program that has a lot of work and curriculum attached to it. So many of the founders, when they truly get a taste of what's required to build a tech company, they self-select to stop. And we take that as actually a very positive outcome because the world is littered with failed tech startups. The economy that we're seeing here today around the world in tech, with job losses and downsizing and just the difficulty of tech companies, we don't want to overpromise and over-encourage people to get into this and take the next decade of their life savings, a lot of other personal sacrifice, only to find out that the company that they believed in at the beginning wasn't really as viable as they once thought, or they realize that they don't have the wherewithal to go through with it or the financial means to go through with something like that. So there's a lot of people who drop out, and that's actually a positive as I see it. Another aspect of Founder Institute is we require you to incorporate the company as a condition of graduating. So a lot of times people are engaging with incubators or engaging with other types of innovation support programs, but they don't really have their actual commitment to do the company. One of the minimum requirements, you have to be a company and a company that is investable. So we have strict rules on how that is done. We help you incorporate, and it's a requirement in order to finish. We also engage a tremendous number of mentors, more than 500. And these are people who you can think are slightly more experienced than the founders who are in the program. They're either graduates or have been invested by other funds such as Techstars or others. We ask them to support, teach classes, deliver sessions. They generally say yes, and we don't pay anybody anything. So they're just giving back because they feel it's their calling to do so. They have some learnings to give, and that's how this program works all around the world. I'll go to the next slide. One of the advantages as it comes to Brampton, and what really excites me about Brampton, is that Founder Institute fits beautifully towards an immigration strategy and just the interest of Brampton to attract more entrepreneurs from all parts of the world who have already quite a high perception of Canada. Our country has an incredible brand around the world, and we can direct some of those founders to Brampton in particular because we share your belief that it's a very immigrant-friendly city that is attractive to people from all over, but with some target markets in particular. I'll talk quickly about Africa. Founder Institute has 12 active chapters running in Africa in cities like Lagos, Abuja, Accra in Ghana, in Cape Town, in Nairobi, Kenya, and others. And those are some of the best Founder Institute chapters anywhere. And one of the opportunities is to do more attraction of the founders, to get them to come to Brampton. I've been successful in doing a bit of that already and with Techstars, and so hope to do a lot more. That's a real opportunity. It gets Brampton top of mind for some entrepreneurs from faraway places as they consider Canada.
Sunil, you're at 5 minutes. If you could wrap up, please.
Okay, I'll wrap up. I think I have my last slide next. I just wanted to show that there's also a lot of homegrown talent from Brampton itself. We go out of our way to find any Brampton entrepreneur who wants to build a startup. This is our offering. They're welcome to join, and then if they graduate, we count them as one of our prestigious alumni from Founder Institute in the GTA. I'll stop there.
Thank you so much, Sunil. Greatly appreciate your delegation, Councillor Tour, Chair of Economic Development, continuing with questions.
This is the first time I've had coffee. I accidentally poured coffee in my cup and not tea, and this is the result of it. Thank you so much, Sunil, for your presentation. I am pleasantly surprised to see, Founder Institute's name on the screen up here. Adi Oresi's work around the world is known, and it's great to see the work that you're doing in Brampton. I just want to ask, maybe perhaps to economic development here, how we can help promote more of the opportunity that Sunil presents in front of us here with Founder Institute Brampton, on how perhaps even as counselors or any other venues that we can use to promote this opportunity even more, because there is a lot of talent here in Brampton, and there's a lot of startups. You guys see them all the time, but I wasn't aware of Founder Institute Brampton, so this is a really good opportunity for people to know about.
Yeah, so we're one of the only municipalities that actually helped sponsor and bring in companies and startups into the Founder Institute program. And I think that's a very unique opportunity that we have in Brampton. And the founders that Sunil showed on his slide, all of them were Brampton founders. So we're spreading the word. We're talking to everybody about the program. A lot of startups come to us. They'll see the Innovation District mobile, or they'll see the advertising that we have about the Innovation District. They'll come to us. They'll ask us, how do we get involved? And we present them the full offering, from the Venture Zone to Founder Institute to the Catalyst, depending on the stage of business that they are and what makes most sense for them. We get them into the program.
Thank you. And I guess to our Economic Development Office and to Sunil as well, do you think we have an opportunity later this year, perhaps, maybe in the summer, if we could host an event with Founder Institute, market that have, university grads, undergrads, high school students, and people that are planning to have a startup or have questions, things like that? Because again, the reason I'm asking these questions is because Founder Institute is a brand name, right? People recognize this very easily, and people are drawn to it. So if perhaps, Sunil, if it would be possible later this year to host an event in the summer where we could invite potential startups, entrepreneurs, I think that would be a really good opportunity. So.
Oh, it's certainly doable. I'd love to do it. We've done some in the past. We've actually adding on Founder Institute to something else, such as a collision gathering at the Rose Theatre or elsewhere, Techstars, bringing some fantastic speakers, mentors, alumni who have a relationship with Brampton. The other opportunity, as you go abroad to other places, such as Lagos or New Delhi or Bangalore, there are chapters likely there, and it might be a nice way to complement the international visit of the city of Brampton with the local network of tech leaders, of investors, venture capital funds, media. It's ready for you. When I'm in New York right now, I'm going to be meeting with the local Founder Institute managing director while I'm here on Friday as a call. And whenever I go somewhere in the world, I usually introduce myself to the local Founder Institute team, because I can count on their network being world class. And it's also very conducive to all the other programs you have, in that it's a great pipeline, and it's actually the most rigorous program to try to do. I don't know if I could do Founder Institute myself, so those who do take it on and graduate, I think they're well poised for success, and I think it's at that point that other incubators or other support programs can really lean in, and because they're a qualified founder that's done the hard work already.
Thank you, Sunil. Points well taken, and thank you again for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Sunil. Our next delegation is from Saba Tosif and Tosif Riaz, co-founders of Considra Care Senior Care Technology in Brampton. Welcome, Saba and Tosif. I apologize if I mispronounced. You have up to 5 minutes.
Nice one. So good morning, councillors and Mayor, I guess, in absentia. My name is Tosif Riaz, and my wife, Saba Tosif. We are both co-founders of Considra Care. We are a technology platform to provide affordable and high-quality care to seniors. Next slide, please. The problem that we are trying to basically solve is one of the biggest issues facing the world, especially Canada right now, which is aging. So people are living longer due to better diet and better health care. And nature does not like humans to live longer, so we get punished through frailty and through diseases, right? So as the population of the world ages, we'll need more care. Now, care cannot be delivered by machines. Alexa and Siri cannot take care of grandma. So the burden of taking care for the elders will fall on humans. So in Canada, for example, which is one of the countries most acutely affected by aging, there are around 2 million seniors right now across Canada who are in need of regular care. The existing infrastructure can only support 20% of their need, right? So who fulfills 80% of the need are the families, the friends, the neighbors of these seniors. So around 5 million Canadians, and I'm sure some of you, maybe most of you here are familiar with this, are in a position where they're providing unpaid, informal care to their seniors. And by some estimates, it costs these families $100 billion a year in opportunity costs. It's probably one of the biggest industry in Canada, the volunteers who take care of seniors. Next slide, please. So given there's not enough infrastructure in the country to provide care to the seniors, the private sector has stepped up. So the number of agencies and organizations across Canada, both for profit and not-for-profit, who provide care to seniors. And most seniors, by the way, 90% of the seniors, if you ask them, they want to age in their own homes. So most of the care is being delivered in home or as per their desire, but the industry suffers from a lot of issues. First of all, it has huge overheads. You're managing a huge workforce. You have to coordinate them. So every dollar that a family pays to get care for their seniors, 40 cents goes into the overhead, for managing the overhead. The second problem is the lack of transparency. So the companies, as we say, they provide this care are still stuck in the 80s. So they use outdated platforms. They have outdated technologies. There's a lot of manual process that goes out. So families suffer because of that because they're usually in the dark, right? There's no coordination. They don't have any view into the logistics. They don't know when a caregiver is showing up and what exactly he or she did when they came to the home. So that's another problem that the industry faces. And the most important problem, the glamour of care in this country goes to the doctors and nurses. But most of the care, like the heartbeat, is being delivered by the caregivers who are at the bottom of the pool here. And they are underpaid, they are disrespected, it's not considered a good career, and they are demotivated. So there's this huge churn in the industry. Any company who is in this space, who's delivering care to seniors, will tell you they lose most of their workforce within 6 months. So this is this kind of spending cycle. So what we are doing, without going into too much detail, we're using technology to empower people, not to replace them. So our platform, it uses automation, it uses artificial intelligence, it uses an app and a central command unit to digitize all aspects of care delivery to seniors. That means everybody kind of wins from it. We reduce our overhead. That reduction in overhead gets passed in terms of cost saving to the seniors and pay raise to the caregivers. Families, they have an app, they get like a real-time feed on what's happening. So they're always aware, whether they are in Canada or abroad, if good care was being delivered to their seniors. And the caregivers are empowered. They always know where they're supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing, right? So it's almost like an invisible assistant that helps every person who's involved in the care circle for seniors to stay on top of what's being done and what's happening. And it's an expensive proposition, so it's also being delivered in an affordable way. Next slide, please. So the proof, as they say, is in the pudding. So this is our 13th month of operation. Last year, we started building the platform and delivering the service. So we were building the aeroplane as we were flying it, but we still had good traction. We actually finished the year at around $130,000 in revenue, which is pretty good for a first year for a startup. We delivered 8,000 hours of care. We created 25 jobs. Most of them were in Brampton. And most of all, we got 5-star reviews on Google. So anybody who touches our service is happy with it. They're delighted by it. So it's all kind of good news for us. On to the next slide, please. And this kind of growth, most of it, I think the big the big growth we saw in the last quarter of last year is thanks to the facilities that are available in Brampton. So we leveraged the Altitude Center, Pam and her team. They were of great use to us. They helped us kind of approach investors. They helped us kind of approach business partners. So that's something that helped us grow a lot. Next slide, please. Last slide. Yeah. So basically, this is our story, first 12 months. This year, we plan on growing to 12 cities, and we also plan on going abroad. We want to leverage, as Sunil was mentioning, the African and South Asian population here. The biggest growth for senior care in the world is in South Asia and in Africa. So we're hoping we can export these best practices that we're forming in Brampton in Canada to those countries.
Thank you so much for your delegation and for your work on this issue. Councillor Tour has a question, followed by Councillor Brar.
Perfect. Just want to say thank you. It's lovely to see an actual power couple here with a really good startup that is much needed. I would say, especially in Brampton, like you mentioned, we have a very young population, but we also at the same time have an aging population, and it's great to see this, and it's good to see that you've benefited from all the services that we've been able to provide as a city. Is there something more that, as councillors, that we can do to help you? Because this is a great business based in Brampton that wants to expand globally. 100%, we would love to be your ambassadors for this wherever possible, wherever we see an opportunity. But is there something that we can do as council to help you grow more?
Yeah, thank you, and I really appreciate that you're asking if you need any help. I think the big help we need, and as you rightfully pointed out, Brampton is probably the fastest aging major city in Canada. So this aging problem is going to be felt most by the population, the civilians here. I think if the city wants to do some pilots, right, and if it wants to encourage age tech venture building, age tech is actually an emerging field, right? It's a huge industry, but it's not very glamorous. So it does not attract a lot of entrepreneurs. But it's a huge market out there. So I think if you can, for example, try some pilots. For example, you can partner with some companies. There are vertical communities in Canada, in Brampton rather, where a lot of seniors are living in condos, in apartment buildings. It's very efficient to deliver services in like a vertical space as opposed to driving around and delivering to multiple houses. So if we can partner with the city, we can do some pilots. We're even willing to fund it ourselves. So we can test our service and we can enhance it for those communities. That would really help us. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Trick. Councillor Brar.
Thank you so much for this delegation. We all know, just like Councillor Trish, that we do have the aging population. And if you look at Brampton, we have been struggling with our healthcare system too. But if you look at Brampton as a whole, it's so diverse. We do have a lot of seniors who live at home with multi-generation homes where they want to age at home. I think that's a lot of the seniors feel the same way. And, making sure that we have, caregivers that can actually, find that say if they have a flu or catch it before they even go to the hospital. So preventing them from going to the hospital, I think, is key. Just let us know how we can help. And I would love to have more information on this. I think we need to educate our communities on what this is about. And I think it will prevent a lot of our seniors from going into the hospital. Thank you.
So Sabha is actually a physician also and a public health expert. So she has the same story as many immigrants to Canada. So she's worked as a physician in 3 countries, but in Canada there's a bottleneck. But I think we're looking at that. We just started looking at how can we educate the community, especially our own community, the South Asian community, more about this. So happy to reach out to you
and another question, like, is there a data that you have that is showing how we're preventing seniors from going to the hospital? I think that'd be a great opportunity to show how this business is doing, and I think helping our communities grow together in the healthcare system.
Okay, we'll follow.
For sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Councillor Barn. To our delegates, our next delegation is 6.10, delegation from James Hayes, co-founder, CEO, Cyber Legends Incorporated, regarding Cyber Legends Incorporated update. Thank you, James. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. And if you can throw the first slide on.
James, we're just bringing up the slide here momentarily.
Okie doke. Perfect. So I'm here as an alumni of the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst. And you heard a lot of things about cybersecurity at sometimes a business-based level. I'm going to take this down to something that we believe at Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst and ours. It's our children. If you could go to the next slide. I'd like to start with telling you a story. This is a 9-year-old boy. He was a victim of child abuse. A trusted babysitter, groomed by pornography, taught to keep a secret, and the parents trusted the babysitter. And the reason I tell you this is because that little boy is me. Next slide, please. What we all have to understand is cybersecurity isn't this abstract thing. I think I did hear someone say that. It's real. And if I was there, I would ask everyone, does someone know someone that's been abused, bullied, or harassed with technology? I think every hand would go up. Next slide, please. Technology has made it harder to keep our kids safe. Over 1.5 billion children were put online during the pandemic, and now you have a remote brick and mortar education system that is never going to go away. Next slide, please. So you have to ask yourselves, what role does Brampton K-8 education system play in putting children at risk? And this is just the news. This is not to point fingers. It's just our reality. Next slide, please. Our education systems in preschool and K-8 introduces directly or indirectly technology for the very first time to children with no cyber safety education. In Canada, cyber safety education is not curriculum aligned and does not exist within our ecosystem, but technology is introduced to every child. Next slide. Which leaves us with our education system, putting our children at risk of both mental and physical and breach harm. Next slide, please. So what would be the solution for this? Well, the solution has to work within the existing educational ecosystem, parental moral decisioning, and enterprise. And we've built it. Next slide. We've built a game-based learning platform that allows children to be able to take their passion for gaming to teach them how to be safe online, that empowers parents, educators, and enterprises to deliver this within their individual silos and ecosystems. Next slide, please. When I say game-based learning, what I mean is a comprehensive, curriculum-aligned parent and teacher dashboard that enables in-school teaching from K-8. In addition to a game-based learning platform that can be used at home that allows for accessible, scalable, and personalized cyber safety education for our children. Next slide, please. And how does the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst help with this and help Brampton? I can't tell you how much they have. I'm going to try to. If you go to their website, next slide, please. You'll see things like supporting you with knowledge and expertise, mentorship, connections. Many accelerators do this. We were part of the TELUS Cyber CWS. We just got into the AWS EdStart program. What I will say is, in Brampton and with the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst, we got all of these things at a greater level of commitment than any of the other programs to date. Hopefully no one from AWS EdStart is on this. But what we most importantly got, next slide, please, is a champion. When you're a startup and you're pre-seed, you need someone that will believe in you and not only give you the mentorship skills that Sunil talked about with the Founder Institute, a rigorous program, but you need the ability to work with mentors and residents, and you need to have access to corporates. An easier way to be able to get in front of the institutions that can help you make an idea a reality. And that is very much what the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst and the team there did for us. Next slide, please. Since our launch in October, we've landed our first 2 school boards in Ontario, Thames Valley School Board and Rainy River School Board. And interestingly enough, in 32 minutes, we're working with the Peel District School Board and presenting this to them. And you might be the 3rd school board system that's going to be adopting. Fingers crossed. Next slide, please. We were also introduced to many enterprises in this space and found out a business opportunity that we didn't even know existed. We were building something for parents and educators. What the Catalyst enabled us to understand that there's value actually for business in both Rogers, RBC, General Dynamics, Sun Life, Hub, introduced us to all, and they all wanted to get involved. Next slide, please. And this slide is specific to the Catalyst. We have over $1 million USD in sales funnel that were introductions to corporates and residents that champion support. So you have something very unique in Brampton. When Charles said it's the #1 cybersecurity catalyst in Canada, it's the #1 in North America. And everyone is going to be going to that. And they just brought us with the Canadian consulate to that event in New York City. They're a value to you. We couldn't have been where we are without them. And I appreciate you hearing about what we're doing today. And my hope is with the Peel Regional School Board coming on board, you'll see us in all of your 136 elementary schools in Brampton soon. And I'm open for questions.
Thank you so much, James, for your delegation. I have one question from Councillor Brock.
Just want to say thank you for that delegation. As a mom of 3, I'm excited to have that in schools. You know, technology is the future for our children. Making sure they're protected is important. We look at cyberbullying. It's not just to our children, but as public figures, we definitely feel that too. And it's being that role model of how we can fix that in the future.
Thank
you, Councillor Brar. Councillor Tour, followed by Councillor Pelletier.
Thank you again for your presentation. Just a question. So, your business, is this is this in just an online digital space, or do you have I would say like a physical space as well?
Yeah, what you would look at is the physical space for teaching children how to be safe online is either at the child's home or in their school, where they're introduced to technology. Our business, we're located in London, Ontario, but very much remote first company. We have employees across the world as well as across Canada. We launched during the pandemic. You can imagine how difficult it is to be able to work in brick and mortar schools that are closed down. So it's been quite an interesting process, and we were helped with Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst. So when you say where we facilitate our teaching, it's within your school systems or it's within the family unit at home. I hope that answers your question.
It does, and just to follow up with that, James, is there something we can do to incentivize you to be based in Brampton? We would love to have you actually be in Brampton so that we can proudly show off that this is another Brampton business that is working across different school boards, across different partners. We would love to have you here.
Well, one thing that's already happened that is enabled us is the ability for us to use the co-workspace with the Catalyst in Brampton when we look to come there. It's always difficult for us as a startup when we're having meetings with various businesses and or people within the space, and when we're hiring and we want to be able to utilize. So that is something that we utilize from our perspective. And then as far as actually bringing the business, it's interesting when you ask that question, because for us being remote first company and trying to take care of 1.5, 1.7 billion children, being located in one space is almost not possible. We are a remote first company in delivery with where we do all of our hires. So we don't really fit within that space of having to have a brick and mortar. But our heart is there because we have been able to grow. And we're actually looking, hopefully, knock on wood, Charles is here to extend our partnership with the Rogers Cybersecure Catalyst, and there might be some things that can happen in the next little bit.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tour, and thank you, James. Our next delegation, 6.11, has been withdrawn, and we have now 6.12, delegation from Shoaib Ahmed, CEO, co-founder Scooty, regarding Scooty update. Welcome, nice to see you again. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. Through the chair, hello, and hello everybody. My name is Shoaib Ahmed. I'm the founder and CEO of Scooty. We are a micromobility company that is going to be launching in the city in April of this year. We won one of the permits that the city we were competing with, and can't wait to have micromobility live in the city of Brampton. But I wanted to talk to you about how our journey started. In 2019, we were a startup with, the metaphorical back of the napkin idea. We were asked to go see this gentleman named Daniel Bishan at the Brampton Entrepreneur Center. And he said, you know what, I like this, let's find a way to get you in. We went through that program, we graduated, we got a little bit of funding, and that program also introduced us to various staff in the city that we were able to convince to do Ontario's first micromobility pilot in the height of the pandemic. Imagine how many hand sanitizers and masks that we had to buy. It was the most successful pilot. The report from that pilot was shared with many cities, so this was the first program of its kind in Ontario. So it was hugely successful. After our experience with the Brampton Entrepreneur Center, we then moved to the Brampton Venture Zone, where we learned a lot more on how to build our business. We secured a lot of opportunities, we secured a lot of partnerships, to the extent, as Lucia just pointed out, we secured the largest grant in the history of the province to date of $1 million that is going to be spent in the city of Brampton to develop transit-integrated mobility. Never been done before in Ontario, and this is going to be in Canada specifically, and it's going to be built here in Brampton. The other amazing thing is, for some reason, we were invited by American Express yesterday. American Express invited us to talk about Scooty and how we grew our business in the city of Brampton. And the question, there's many questions on why Brampton, why Brampton. And, Councillor Tour just, pointed out an attitude of the city, which is can do. Let's find a way to make it happen. Let's do it. And then I asked American Express, why don't you have a lot of business in the city of Brampton? And they said, well, and then I asked them, how many reps do you have? And they said they have one. So Claire, they want an introduction. So I'm going to be doing an email introduction for American Express to learn more about the city. I cannot thank you enough, especially the council over here and council that are tuning in online and virtually. You rode our scooters, you gave our feedback. That led to so many ripple effect opportunities, and we can't wait to launch this incredible program in the city. The other thing I wanted to point out is there's a lot of cheerleaders here, from Claire to Inez to Usha and others, that really create this opportunity for startups to grow. And we're going to be setting an example for the city of Brampton. And for that, I thank you.
And thank you, Scooty, for the incredible update. Looking forward to getting on the scooter and Councillor Keenan riding beside me on the bike lane. Councillor Tour has a question.
I just want to say thank you, Shoaib. You seem to have grown alongside our economic development team over the last few years, and you've gone through each and every single offering that we have. And so I just want to say congratulations. It's exciting to see that, later this spring we'll see scooters in our city as well, and we'll be one of the first ones around. So hopefully other cities are envious and they look at us and say that we want to do what Brampton's doing because we're doing it right. So thank you so much, Shoaib.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Council.
Thank you so much, Councillor. I'm so sorry. Councillor Keenan asked me a question. He should have asked you, but we're laughing because he whispered and said to me, "Are they electric?"
They are. They're fully electric, and this is one of those clean tech devices that we're going to be launching in the city of Brampton. The range on a scooter is about 55 kilometers.
Thanks, Councillor
You're
Keenan.
welcome.
Thank you. We are
You're
so
welcome.
looking forward to it. What a successful story for
Thank
Brampton.
you so much. Thank you.
And that concludes our delegations. Concluding remarks? Yes, no? No? Okay, so we just need to receive all the delegations that were presented from 6.4 until 6.12. I have a motion moved by Chair of Economic Development, Councillor Tour, to receive the delegations. All those in favor, all those opposed, that carries. Thank you, Economic Development, for your incredible work in the city of Brampton. Our next item is Government Relations 7.1. Andreas Hoffman is here with a presentation. Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. 1 second. I apologize. Before we go to Government Relations, we wanted to do a photo. That is my mistake. I should have mentioned that in the beginning. We want to do a photo with all of the economic development updates and delegations today. I'll ask all members of council to please join us for that photo. Okay, thank you very much. So Andreas, we have a government relations update. Just give folks a couple of minutes to exit the chambers if they have to. Government relations, please go ahead, thanks.
Good morning, and Madam Chair and members of committee. And through the chairs, I'd like to start this morning with a regional agenda overview. This Thursday, January 19th, marks beginning of deliberations of the proposed 2023 regional budget. Next slide, please. This slide provides an overview of the regional budget deliberations process, including key dates and presentation schedule. This week, we begin with external agencies' presentations, specifically Peel Regional Police and Ontario Regional Police. Next week, January 26th, the Regional Council will take a deeper dive into the regional services budget with presentations by specific service area. Week of February the 2nd will focus on presentations by conservation authorities, and additional time for further deliberations is set aside for February the 9th. Government relations team with finance staff will be following deliberations closely.
Sorry,
will be
point of order by Councillor Tour, sorry to interrupt.
We're not able to hear the delegation, so either if
sorry.
Sir needs
I'll
to
try
speak
to speak
louder,
up.
or if we can make it louder. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The government relations team, together with finance, will be following budget deliberations closely and will be providing any support required. We will be also providing a briefing note ahead of the budget process beginning. Next slide, please. This week opens with an overview of the 3.1 billion budget. The budget document includes an average of 2.8% property tax increase, as well as 7.9% utility rate increase. It's worth noting that the regional budget was developed prior to introduction of important provincial legislation, specifically Bills 23 and 39. Regional staff will be offering updates as additional information becomes available. Next slide, please. Speaking of provincial legislation.
All right, point of order from Councillor Tour.
Speaking of provincial legislation, item 6.3 provides findings of a financial sustainability of growth study and impacts to the region from Bill 23. The potential funding gap that the region identified could impact service delivery required to meet Brampton's growth projections as well as new housing targets. Furthermore, due to the unknown impacts from Bill 23, increased housing and decreased DC revenues, and widening DC revenue compared to expenditure gap, there is a risk for capacity of the region to deliver necessary supporting infrastructure that is required to deliver on Brampton's new housing targets. Next slide, please. Staying with Bill 23 a little longer, item 7.1 is a staff report that provides an initial assessment of the risks presented by changes in Bill 23 to the regional capital plan. This includes capital projects at risk should municipalities not be made whole. Staff determined that the DC exemptions under Bill 23 are estimated to result in revenue shortfall of $1.2 billion over the next 10 years. The loss of DC funding to region's housing services will put 94,642 units at risk of not proceeding or being delayed. This includes projects located in Brampton that could also be delayed or not delivered. In its current form, the new housing targets identified through Bill 23 will outpace the ability to deliver soft services, including needed healthcare services and other supporting infrastructure for Brampton residents. Also, there will be a need for further transit investment to reduce congestion, move people and goods, support community growth, and economic development. This further reinforces the request by City of Brampton Council for additional funding from the province to support the city in responding to Brampton's housing needs and supporting infrastructure while working together to realize provincial policy objectives. Next slide, please. And while on the subject of needed infrastructure investments, item 7.2.4, my apologies, provides an update on hospital funding. In a way of background, in December of 2021, Brampton City Council approved 62.5 million, which equals to 50% of local share requirement, while requesting the Region of Peel commits to funding the remaining 50% towards the Peel Memorial Center expansion project. Regional staff determined that any Peel contribution would be funded from property taxes. A potential Peel contribution is not part of 2023 regional budget deliberations, and report also points to ongoing effort by regional staff with advocacy towards the province to re-examine the local share hospital capital calculation methodology. I would only point out that AMO has led municipalities in long-standing advocacy with the project, with the province on this issue, and Brampton continues to advocate with the province as well. Next slide, please. Moving on to provincial updates. Last Wednesday, January the 11th, the Minister of Finance kicked off the provincial pre-budget consultations with events in Brampton. This provided members of council with an opportunity to engage with the minister directly and highlight some of city's priorities. Staff are currently working on a formal submission by the city and will bring draft document for council approval prior to February 10th deadline. I also wanted to mention that this past Monday, members of council met with Brampton members of provincial parliament to discuss key priorities and engage on opportunities. This discussion set a collaborative tone for the work ahead. GR team would like to thank members of council for such a well-attended event. Next slide, please. Moving on to federal updates. The federal pre-budget consultations are also ongoing, with the same date of February 10th as a deadline for submissions. Staff will continue to work on a draft document and also bring it for council approval prior to submission. We'd also like to point out that the GR team is working on a meeting with Brampton representatives in Ottawa, and we will be setting up a similar meeting to the one we had this Monday with our provincial representatives. As soon as details of that meeting are available, we will be sharing them with members of council. And last federal update is the fact that this Monday, Infrastructure Canada has announced a call for applications to the Disaster Mitigation and Adaptation Fund, DMAF. Application deadline is July 19th. City has successfully applied for funding through DMAF in the past, and staff are currently reviewing program requirements for potential application. Next slide, please. And the last slide provides an update on the annual event by Association of Municipalities of Ontario. This year's annual conference will take place in the City of London, August 20th and to 23. GR team has reached out to members of council with assistance with registration and other arrangements. We are currently working on advocacy materials and identifying engagement and advocacy opportunities for the conference. Our council will be provided with updates as new information becomes available. And that concludes today's presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Andreas. Any questions from members of council regarding government relations? I see none. Motion from Councillor Vicente to receive the presentation. Thank you so much. All those opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Next item is, according to Councillor Paleshi, lunch. We're going to break for lunch. At the moment, 45 minutes, good? Yes, so we will return back in the chambers here at approximately 12:35 and enjoy the break. We will see you at 12:35, beginning with legislation. Thanks, everyone, and welcome back to Committee of Council from our lunch break. We do have quorum as checked by the clerk. The next section is legislative services, and all items were put into consent, which brings us to 8.5, Councilor's question period. Do any members of council have any questions regarding the legislative services section? I see none. I don't think we have any online either. Public question period. Mr. Clerk, do we have any questions from the public either here in the gallery or online?
On this section, through Chair Santos, no, we do not.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll now pass the chair over to Councillor Tour for economic development, the economic development section. Councillor Tour.
Sorry. Do any members have any questions regarding the economic development section? Seeing none. So seeing none, we'll move on to the public question period. If there's any questions from the public regarding any items.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are none.
Okay, seeing none, I'll now pass the chair to Councillor Singh for the corporate services part of the agenda.
Moving on to the corporate services section, we don't have any staff reports. 10.2.1 was put in consent, 10.2.2 was put in consent, 10.2.3 was put in consent, and so we're on 10.2.4, which is a staff report regarding governance and management options for the Bovaird House. Do any councilors have any questions? I see Mayor Brown. We'll pass. Oh, sorry, Councillor Santos.
Yeah, thank you through you, Mr. Chair. I think that based on this report and some conversations with colleagues and various stakeholders as well, and thank you to staff for that report. I think that option 3 and looking at expression of interest in the community, of course, Friends of Bovaird House is welcome to also be part of that expression of interest. But I think Councillor Pelletier had brought up a good point, as well as it was mentioned in the delegation about PAMA. There is an opportunity there to see whether or not PAMA would be interested in coming on board. So, Steve, if you could share with us what the thinking might be behind option 3 to include PAMA.
Sure, through the Deputy Mayor to the Councillor Santos for the question. Based on Council's direction today, if we were to move forward with option 3, staff would first initiate conversations with the region to bring this matter to their attention, and then we could set up a almost like a memorandum of understanding, if you will, with PAMA, so that one, we have an agreement of how the Bovaird House would be programmed, brought into some of their operations with respect to their curator, look at elevating the status of the Bovaird House more towards that museum status to enable it to receive different levels of funding and grants from different levels of government. And certainly if any volunteer group wanted to participate in activities or programming with the Bovaird House, that would be administered by both the city and through the region via this type of memorandum of understanding. And that kind of fits within the theme of option 3 as presented in the report.
Under option 3.
Correct, yes.
Mr. Clerk, and I guess over to my colleagues as well, or to Steve, I guess the recommendation would be then to adopt option number 3.
And then if there is a specific direction from council to engage with the region, maybe with a minor modification to say that staff be directed to initiate conversations with the region of Peel, specifically those charged with the operations of PAMA, and report back to council.
Okay. So, Mr. Clerk, that staff be directed to begin discussions or negotiations or conversations?
It would be discussions.
Discussions with the region of Peel in their interest through PAMA?
Correct.
To operate the Bovaird House?
That's right.
And that's still in line with option number 3 in terms of expression of interest?
Correct.
And then I guess in the interim, where does that leave us in the interim?
So As the report clearly states, in the interim, because the Friends of the Beauvaird House, as through their delegation, are working as almost stewards, if you will, to provide that volunteer service, planning, building, growth management staff would have conversations with the Friends of the Beauvaird House to provide a greater level of oversight and be reporting to council on a regular basis on that oversight. We would set up some metrics in terms of reporting and the types of activities and programming that are going on at the Beauvaird House. So we have that as a bit of an interim solution until such time an arrangement is agreed to with PAMA.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Clerk, is that covered in its entirety in the motion that's on the screen? In terms of direction, Steve, if you can just double check and make sure we have everything covered and that it's clear.
Through the chair, Peter, if you could just scroll up so I could read number 3, that staff be directed. Yeah, number 4 then covers that interim solution.
Okay.
Perfect.
Perfect, and I think that this motion looks at how we modernize and create more governance structure and accountability in terms of the operations of the Beauvaird House property, but also allows the recognition and ongoing participation of the many volunteers who have been so passionate about contributing to that particular site and the history of the Beauvaird House. And so I'm looking forward to hearing back to see whether or not PAMA can come on board to join us. So happy to move the motion and hope that my colleagues will support.
Thank you, Councillor Santos. I have Councillor Medeiros on the board as well. So Councillor Medeiros, speaking to the motion.
Yeah, thank you very much through you, Chair. I just want to, confirm, I think I did hear it that if staff could confirm that if the Friends of Historic Beauvaird House wanted to, apply or wanted to be considered for the RP, they would be also a participant. Is that what I confirmed?
Through the chair, through to you, Councillor Medeiros, that's exactly what staff had indicated. Okay, and then after, through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. And maybe to staff, I do like the discussions with the Region Appeal through via PAMA to see if there's some opportunities there. And I guess that when we do an RFP, it would be really, adhere to the purpose of what Beauvaird House was proposed and why the land was given to the city. So it's not a question of that there would be allowed other uses or so on, or is that something that would be considered as well? Through the chair, at this point in time, it would be to maintain the original purpose and intent of Beauvaird House. But what I might suggest is through reporting back on this, if there were other uses to be explored, we could certainly bring that back forward to council's further consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion on the floor moved by Councillor Santos. So I'll take a motion to approve the recommendations and receive 10.4.1. And I will ask for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote has been requested. All members of committee that are in the chambers, please stand if in favor of the motion as shown on the screen. Showing in favor is Councillor Santos, Councillor Brar, Councillor Paleshi, Councillor Keenan, Chair Singh, Mayor Brown, Councillor Power, Councillor Tour. Councillor Vicente, how do you vote?
In favor.
Thank you. Councillor Medeiros, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Fortini, how do you vote?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, that motion carries unanimously, 11-0.
Thank you. So that passes. Moving on, now we're at councillor question period. Any members of council have any questions? Nope. Seeing and hearing none. Public question period.
Yes, I have a question.
Sure.
So with the four different options, we're looking at number 3. I wanted to understand that particular option in that, does that provide for a curator for the house? Because Councillor Santos had requested looking into museum status. And Bovaird House, we had looked at it many times and done a lot of research on it. Without a curator, the house does not get museum status, so therefore you're not open to the grants that you're looking for. So I wanted to make sure that your option 3 takes that into consideration.
To our Commissioner of Planning.
Yep. Through the chair, that's certainly the intent of option 3, through those discussions with PAMA, would be to figure out how to get a curator on board to bring it to museum status.
An on-site curator
Correct.
at Bovaird House.
That's right. And
Okay.
again, the details would be further
No,
reported
I'm
back to
just,
council. Yeah.
that's what it requires under the statutes, so that's why I was asking the question. Thanks very
Thank you,
much.
and noted, and we can incorporate that into the discussion.
Exactly.
Gloria, Gloria, Berger, Berger. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other questions, I will pass it to Councillor Vicente to chair the Public Works and Engineering section.
Thank you very much, Councillor Singh. Members of the committee, our next item is 11.2.1, the staff report for the Queen Street Highway 7 bus rapid transit system, the preliminary design business case and transit project assessment process project update. You have the report before you. Do any members have questions? Mr. Clerk?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, there are no questions on the board from members.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have a motion moved by Councillor Singh to approve the staff report. Are there any opposed? And that carries. Next, we have an item that was held by Councillor Pleshy, 11.2.2, staff budget amendment and a report for the Gage Park Ice Truck and Refrigeration Plant in Ward 3. Councillor Pleshy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I held this report not to stop any progress. It's certainly not my area that I represent to stop any progress in any of the changes that are needed. I guess what I'm looking for, though, is going up, almost doubling the original budget. And I realize staff were able to move some things around, or it was determined that certain projects were no longer required. I'd like to understand what those projects were no longer required, what they are. And then also, I would also like to better understand some of the added things or things that we, I guess we didn't catch in the beginning. It mentions here that there's significant work in some of the trees. So why wasn't that in the original scope? What significant work is it? So I'd like a further breakdown of why the added costs. I understand that, COVID dollars it's real inflation, but that's not, to me, that's not the full amount of why the increase. So I don't know if staff can comment on some of those things now, or just provide either myself, or if members of council wish, just an email to members of council with all the added information.
Thank you, Councillor Pleshy. I'll ask if staff have an immediate comment to offer.
For you, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to give a breakdown. So there are 3 components to the increased cost. One would be the inflation. The second would be some code compliance recommendations by the consultant, which were items that had we not, there were 3 items, inflation, code compliance, and third was items which were identified by consultant that we would better perform now rather than having a shutdown in the future.
Sure.
So the first one is inflation, which is understood. The second is code compliance, which is compliance, which are, for example, fire safety, ventilation requirements, which are each, ever so often the codes that evolve and changes, and we have to comply once we get into modifications of a building. And also added to that, for example, in TSSA requirements, once we have completed the project, they would visit the site, and if things are not up to code compliance, they would deny us approval. And so therefore we had to evolve the design to meet those requirements.
So these are new requirements that came into effect after we originally sent out the the tender, the proposal?
Well, I can't, through you, Mr. Chair, I can't speak to the specifics about the when of it, but through the development of the project, we understood that those code requirements became necessary as we were evolving the project.
Do we have a dollar figure for that?
Yes, code compliance around $600,000, plus or minus, yes.
$600,000.
Yes.
From the time we issued the tender, and we don't know timing-wise, but that's an added cost into this. I don't.
Just to clarify, I've added in there also the inflation requirements and also the scope itself.
But 600,000 is just on the codes.
On the code compliance, yes.
Right. So just speaking, referring to the codes on its own, that's a big increase for one project. When did we originally start this process? 2021, wasn't it?
Yes, it is.
And so from 2021 till recently, we understand, and those are provincial code?
Yes, yes. Just the inflation requirements in terms of what has transpired over the last 3 years is around 20 to 30%. So that alone, as part of the 600, is significant, is a third of that number, right? So the compliance issues would be, if the total is 600, then the difference would be 400 grand, as in terms of scope increases.
So I don't understand the 20 to 30% in code.
And no, I was referring to, for example, the overall cost of the code compliance component is $600,000, right? So 20 to 30% of that is the inflation requirements. So the differential would be the actual scope of the work performed.
Okay, so we still have the inflation. We have an overarching inflation on all, and then we have inflation on just the code requirements, the work that has to be done.
So I was just passing them in components.
Sure.
So you could understand this.
Okay. Can I get a kind of a breakdown of what code changes since had happened since then and now?
Yeah.
And then the trees?
The trees, I will probably have Dorian, who is the project manager, explain more.
Thank you.
So in terms of tree protection, that's a big aspect of the project. And these requirements were sort of developed through communications with forestry. So we have, what wasn't originally planned for is sort of additional measures to protect the tree roots. So we have hydro excavation, that it's mandatory, right? We couldn't do a conventional excavation. There's layers of mulch that has to be put in place on top of the sodded areas, and then layers of plywood where the equipment is going to be stationed. There's manual labor only within tree protection zones. There's quite a few of those. So those all form sort of tree protection requirements that were sort of developed during the design development stage in coordination with forestry.
But that has to do with the construction, right? That has to do with the way everything is being constructed in terms of the work?
Yes.
So why don't we say to the company, these are our requirements, this is what you have to abide by, and then it's up to them to determine what the best preservation of the roots.
The problem is you need an expert landscape architect to sort of develop the requirements. It's not a good idea to leave this up to the GC. They don't necessarily have the expertise. You sort of still have to spell out what the requirements are. So that's where the sort of the consultants work together, along with forestry.
We have the experts, right?
So forestry, but we also have a landscape architect on board that worked with forestry to sort of identify the requirements for protecting the trees.
Mm-hmm. Who brought this to our attention from the time it was the first tender to now the second? Was it the private sector that actually said to us that?
No, this was all done through coordination with forestry.
It was?
Or discussion with forestry.
Okay. There was four bids originally. Were there any disqualified?
One.
One was disqualified,
Yes.
so there's 5 in total.
5 in total.
4 went through. All 4 were significantly higher. How much higher?
So the lowest compliant bid, if I'm mistaken, was 2.24, 2,240,000.
2.2. Yeah. And I know we're changing it now, so it doesn't matter what the bids were because we're changing it to, for added things that we need.
That's correct.
Was it those bids that had said that their requirements, code requirements had changed? Or we knew that they were coming?
No, we knew. So we sort of identified all of those, the consulting group did through the design development phase. So they had detailed reviews of the site, right? So through those detailed reviews, they identified, look, there's some deficiencies here, or items that are not code compliant.
Okay.
And those identified through the design process.
Okay. With, I guess, all the construction that's happening kind of in the downtown now, I guess we want to get in and out as soon as possible to do the work. What if we were to say, because as of right now, the way the report's written, it talks about potential hazards, potential issues because of the cracks in the concrete and whatnot. And the fact that that system has outlived its life, that life capacity. Now, that life capacity of the system, is that under our requirements or is that kind of standard?
No, so that would be our requirements. So I can tell you in terms of the critical piece of equipment, so which is the chiller, the compressors. So the chiller is way past its life expectancy. And recreation, they were made aware by the service contractor that this equipment must be changed. Actually, we had doubt whether or not the equipment was going to make it through this current winter
We weren't
season.
sure if it was going to make it through?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's way surpassed.
And have we spoken with the manufacturer and the manufacturer's saying the same thing?
We've spoken with a service provider, which is Simco, and they're saying it's on its last legs, needs to be replaced ASAP.
Okay. So if we have to do it, we have to do it now?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I guess those are my questions. I look forward to more of kind of that detail and some of the other answers to my questions. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Or Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you very much, Council. Thank you very much, Councillor Pleshy. I'll ask the clerk if there are any other speakers.
Councillor Keenan, followed by Mayor Brown.
Thank you, Councillor Keenan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So for me, this obviously, Gage Park is a massive attraction for our city. It is in my ward.
They left.
That's okay. Guess I'm not that important.
Go ahead, Councillor.
1 second. Are we waiting till they come back? I don't know if we need to. You're okay?
Councillor, I suspect
That's
your
fine.
question relates to events, which would be.
Well, yes and no, but so for me, we've seen, first and foremost, we've seen a lot over the last few years, Gage Park being, sectioned off for different things to be constructed, fixed, the park, the splash pad. I want to make sure that this is the last summer that we're closing down Gage Park in any capacity to fix, to add, to. I just want to make sure that everything is covered in this so that we're not continuously doing this, moving events. I do know that this rink needs to be fixed. That's been well versed here. But for me, it's about making sure that we keep this rink open for this season as long as we can, past Family Day, if possible, as long as it stays on those last legs. Second to that, I don't want to see Gage Park being hoarded off if they're not ready to start construction. So if we see it hoarded off, we need trucks on site, we need people ready to work. There's no point in closing it down for any more time than we actually need to. And my last piece is on all the events that we have that happen there. Wanting to make sure that they find a home and that the area councilors, are in agreement that it makes sense to where they're going. So I'm not sure who's in charge of moving the events, but I just ask that, we as council are well versed in where they plan to be moved to, and that, they can be moved, and that we're working with those parties to make sure that they're accommodated for, to make sure we don't lose the attraction, especially the things that happen year over year. So I know I kind of laid a lot out there, but if anybody wants to comment, that'd be great. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor, I can speak to the events piece of it, and I've got Jason Tamming here as well that can add anything that I missed. But we have been working with the partners to find alternative locations for all of the events that are scheduled for Gage Park for this year. And obviously, this is a mutual agreement arrangement. We'll offer spaces throughout the city as an alternative for this season, provided the events coordinators are happy with that location. They're welcome to it, but of course, the decision ultimately is theirs whether to accept it or not. There are some that have certain restrictions, like that have to operate within a vicinity of the downtown, for instance. So we'll be working with them to find an appropriate location. But what we can do as we reach agreement with each of those event coordinators, we can send an update to the ward councilors, or to all of council really, so that you are aware of where the events will be relocated to for the 2023 season. And we expect that it will only be for the 2023 season, so a one-year period.
Councillor, any further questions?
Maybe just quickly through the chair to Councillor Keenan, the splash pad, playground, and public washrooms are going to remain open through construction.
All right, thank you. Councillor Keenan, any further questions?
No, but Marlon, did you have any comments?
Yeah, through the chair, I just wanted to mention that it's not just communication to members of council, but also to our residents as well, and let them aware.
Okay. No more questions for me. Thank you. Thank you, staff.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Next, Mayor Brown.
Visante, and obviously, this is a historic park in Brampton. I know we had the construction. I got lots and lots of feedback from residents about the length of the construction we had with the splash pad and the children's park, the playground. Just to repeat and be clear, how long is the construction going to take? I've sort of heard different responses.
We anticipate the park to be closed in May, and then up to November, late November.
Okay. And every year when ice rinks open, I send our community services commissioner a message. That message is, why is Toronto's ice rinks open in November and we're not in Brampton? And the response I've had each year was, well, we have older equipment. And I see the event, and there's John Tory at the first skate of the year in November, and I see thousands of happy faces of residents enjoying the mild temperature skates, which are probably the most enjoyable. And I'm jealous, because I know our residents, you go to Gage Park and see how busy it is, people love it, particularly when it's not too cold. And so if we're doing this, I hope we're doing it right, in the sense that in Toronto, the way the explanation was given to me at the time was, you look at the rinks, there's about an elevated surface, and the pipes and the freezing is next to it. And so it's not like they have to freeze layer after layer, but if you go to Gage Park, there's no barriers. It means you have to freeze layer after layer. I don't want to be in a position after spending this money and going through an arduous construction process where I'm told, well, we have to open a month later because we don't have the same standard as other municipalities. And it's not just Toronto. I've seen a bunch of other municipalities with those photos, the ice rinks open. I want to be able to open the same time as Toronto. There's no weather difference in Toronto and Brampton. It's actually nicer here. So, can I be confident that we're going to be able to open Gage Park after this construction at the same time as they do the ice rinks in Toronto?
For you, Mr. Chair, one of the improvements that was made was that currently, with the current system, we open the park only at 4 degrees and lower. Mm-hmm. With the upgrade, we should be able to do it at 7 degrees. And so potentially we will have a longer duration in terms of season, and surely we could be able to compete with Toronto. I'm not sure to what extent, but certainly there would be a significant upgrade to the system.
But in terms of not having to build the ice, where I think the chief understands where I'm going with this. Maybe you could answer that aspect. Are we going to have the equipment, the freezing equipment, and the way it's built in, where there's sort of an indent where the water's not going to flow off?
Yeah.
do we have what they have in Toronto in terms of those photos we were looking at last year?
So through the chair, I might have to defer that part of the question to the team, but I've talked to our rec team, and we're going to try to align with Toronto this year. I think there's 8 more tons of cooling that allows this rink to operate at higher temperatures. I think the only difference with Toronto is the shade of City Hall over Nathan Phillips Square, because it's really at that temperature. To get ice going is harder. So it's just
but it wasn't Nathan Phillips Square. It was all these other rinks in the city they were opening. They didn't have any shade, right? The first one they opened isn't even the City Hall one.
The Gardner one, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, there were no, I forget where it was. It might have been North York.
Yeah, so our rec team will be, provided construction's done, we're definitely going to try to open up at the same time as Toronto.
Point being, if we're going to do this, and it's going to be a painful construction, we got to do it right.
Yeah, first, Mr. Chair, I'll let Dorian probably say a few words on this.
Mr. Mayor, I believe you're referring to curbs. That's what they have in the city of Toronto, right? So the issue with curbs, and we spoke with this, we spoke with the recreation team about installing new curbs. The problem is they're beneficial in terms of flooding the rink, but they're a trip hazard, first of all. And then second of all, if in warmer temperatures, when the top ice melts, that water runoff has nowhere to go. So it was determined it wasn't a practical idea to put curbs in here. They wouldn't sort of help with the performance of the plant. They were a tripping hazard, and they would sort of prevent water runoff.
I guess my question then is, how do other cities do it without having a tripping hazard and flooding issues?
So that's a good question. I know this is based on conversations we had with recreation, right? But again, the curbs being there only will help with making the ice,
which is
flooding the rink.
Which is sort of the purpose of having an ice rink is be able to make the ice, right?
Yes. So currently we use other methods to sort of flood the rink. They use, I believe, snow on the sides, and that's how they flood the rink. But the use of curbs was considered.
But the problem is in November when Toronto and Barrie and Vaughan, other cities open their rinks, there's no snow in November when they open those rinks.
Right. So we did to go back to your question, we did add almost a 10% capacity to the plant, which is the new plant is oversized. The new compressors are more efficient, so that will help with being able to open the rink.
Yeah, my worry is that we're still building it the same way that puts us at a disadvantage of other cities. So if we're going out to residents to say we're going to have this significant cost, as Councillor Pelletier alluded to, we're going to have a significant disruption in the downtown, but if we're still not going to be as good as other cities, I don't know how to explain that to residents.
Mm-hmm.
And so, with this new system, what I'd like to the commissioner is I want to have a commitment that we are going to be able to open at the same time as these other cities. And if that means that we have to have a curb like the other cities, then why are we not having that conversation? If other cities aren't worried about a tripping hazard, then why are we the only city that is?
Yeah, through the chair to the mayor, that certainly we can take that back right after this meeting with BDC and confirm that we can do it. Our intention, like I said, is to try to get this open at the same time as Toronto, so we need to make sure that we have the ability with the construction to do that.
So where do we go from here? Can we get an update on that? Can you send an email to council on how it's possible to achieve that?
Yeah, through the chair to the mayor. Yeah, I think we'll touch base with BDC to make sure from a construction standpoint that we're able to do that and meet those.
Or do we need that added to the motion? Yeah. Okay, over to Councillor Pelletier. Well, sorry, Councillor Vicente, John.
Thank you, go ahead, Mayor, to Councillor Palet.
I felt like he was going to continue my sentence though, so.
All right. So I'll just ask staff if they have enough direction here or if we need to defer this and allow staff more time to look at this specifically.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So there are other members on the board. Remotely, there's Councillor Fortini's on the board and Councillor Pelletier and Chambers is on the board.
All right. Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to Mayor Brown, thank you. So I remember when they built Chinguacousy Park, I was part of that. We put a curb around there and we put a splash pad for the people in the summer. So Toronto opened, I think, 16 rinks all the same time. Glencairn, the one on St. Clair and Dufferin, the same day, and we haven't opened them yet. So if you go inside Chinguacousy Park, the BTU of gas is not enough to run the boilers. There's not enough gas to run it. We went through this before. And I think when they ran the gas lines, they didn't run enough pressure to run over to, from, I guess, Queen Street, wherever they ran it, to the chillers. So we're having a problem with that. The other issue I want to ask the staff, since we're going to do this construction in Gage Park, we have all these wiring when they do the rotary and all electrical. Since we're digging everything up, can we put some condos and our plugs? They actually just plug in near the road instead of running all the wires from way back there all the way across. Underground?
Underground electrical service to power?
Well, yeah, when they're doing the rotary or they're doing these road closures, I've seen all these wires on the floor going all the way across where I think where the splash flag is, that little house over there, and they're coming all the way across to the road. So if we're going to be digging it out, we could put condos underground and put a box on the top where they could open it with a lock and plug everything in. Instead of running all these wires, it's a chirp hazard, it's dangerous. We're digging it out now. A little bit of condos is not going to hurt, but at least the plugs are already there.
Mr. Chair, I think we can explore the potential of doing this, but I just want to note the stage of the project that we are at. We are already in point of tender, and reopening the tender has consequences in terms of cost and so forth. So while we will explore, we will see what we could potentially get done, but there will be other cost implications.
Yeah, and the other question is maybe if we, with Mayor Brown, if we actually go to Chinguacousy Park and you look where the chillers are, the BTU is not enough to run all the chillers. And that's why when it hits 5 degrees, it's all water. So if Toronto opens them up in November, usually Brampton should be at least 2 or 3 degrees colder than Toronto. And we should have them up and running. If you have the heaters above you on, the chillers won't have enough gas. If you have the chillers on, you won't have enough BTU gas for the heat. So that's what we got to look into, not to make the same mistake. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Is there any further response, staff?
No? We will, okay. For Chair, we will explore the issue of the curbs and get back to Council.
All right. Thank you. Next, Councillor Palashi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I guess it is now a full stop and halt on this, on the tender, because it was. I was reminded earlier in going to the Jazz Festival, the issues that they were having with electrical. So if now's the time to fix that with this scope, then we need to fix that. It's got to be fixed because we can't have that in the future. We can't run that festival the way it's like. It requires some serious power, and they were having a lot of issues, and I don't want that to happen again. So if we need to add that to this, now's the time to do it, then let's add that to this. Also, a 2-inch curb, temporary 2-inch curb, isn't much to ask in terms of, maybe it needs to be there, maybe it needs to be orange or something like that. Maybe we need to indicate a sign, the temporary tripping hazard or something like that, but we need to add that as well. So if you can fix those things within the scope of the current contract, in the current RFP, great, but I don't think you can.
Can I just, through the Chair, I just want to note that one of the principal drivers of the project is the functionality of the existing system. It's near failure. So it means that even this season can be at risk. So if we delay this tender, the implication is that we have to do it next year, which means we don't know how long the current system will function.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, but I'm not gonna, as much as Gage Park is great to me, and you won't get, I'm not the area councillor. If I was the area councillor, I still would say, I'm not gonna pay more later if the work can be done now. And I would run that risk, unfortunately. Get out the electrical tape and the duct tape, because I'm not gonna have taxpayers pay more because we should have done this 5 years ago. I was a councillor then, so, I won't support it. Absolutely
Okay.
not, so I don't know.
Councillor Paleshi, in order to be helpful, we're at committee today. Perhaps if we could ask staff then to come back to us at council next week with any potential amendments or fixes to this to see if we can have this done this year. Otherwise, we will find out next week whether or not there may be further delay required for this. Does that sound acceptable, Councillor Paleshi?
Yeah, no, it does, Mr. Chair, for sure. I'm happy to refer it to council next week, and then get all of staff, whatever needs to be done in Gage Park, that work can happen because of this work. Let's do it. If it doesn't impact it, like I don't know, the electrical lines are under the ground, so it's now the time to do it. It makes sense to me. You know, the sump pump is on its last legs. If that needs to be fixed now because of the work that we're doing, then we need to get into that. The curb, maybe that's something else that we can, you know, just add closer to the winter months. You know, design where it's, put in a little 2-inch rubber curb, something like that. Maybe that's something that can just be an add-on. As much as I don't like, you know, add-ons, I wouldn't want a purchase order for this particular one because then they're gonna charge us more, but maybe that's something that we can even take in-house. Like we certainly have the expertise in-house. Our staff that are building our rinks now are fantastic, so they know what they're doing. We know that they're out there, so. Buy an aftermarket rubber 2-inch barrier and slap it up around the side. But happy to refer it to council next week. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Paleshi. Are there any other speakers, Mr. Clerk?
There are none on the referral.
Okay. So members, we have a motion for referral to the January 25th, 2023 meeting of council for this item moved by Councillor Paleshi. All in favor? Are there any opposed? And so that carries. So next we have councillor question period for this section of the agenda. Do any members have any questions regarding the corporate services, our public works section? Seeing none, we'll move on to 11.6, public question period. Mr. Clerk, do we have any questions from members of the public for our Public Works and Engineering section today?
There are none, Mr. Chair.
Okay, very good. So then I will now pass the chair over to Councillor Santos to chair our Community Services section of today's committee agenda. Councillor.
Thank you so much, Councillor Vicente. We're now at Community Services. All items were put into consent with the exception of Councillor question period. Do any members of council have any questions regarding Community Services? I see none. Public question period. Mr. Clerk, do we have any questions online?
Through you, Chair Santos, there are none for this or for general public question period.
Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to referred matters list, which is published quarterly on the meeting agenda. And do any members have any questions regarding the referred matters list? I see none. Motion, no motion. No questions for public question period. Next item is closed session to deal with an added item agenda from Councillor Paleshi. Mr. Clerk, if you could summarize that item, please.
Through you, Chair Santos, there are two items for closed session. The first is 15.1, published with the agenda, an open meeting exception under Section 239(2)(c) of the Act, proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, a property acquisition matter. And the second added item was added during the start of the meeting, and it is an open meeting exception under Section 239(2)(e) and F of the Act, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. A planning matter subject to appeal in Ward 6.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I believe 15.1 was put into consent. No one held it that I know of.
My apologies. Then there is a public motion arising from that, and we can deal with that after closed.
Okay, perfect.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clerk, how much time would you need to go before we go in camera?
Chair Santos, 10 minutes would be appreciated.
Thank you. Motion moved by Councillor Keenan to go into closed session.
Yeah, I thought we were going in for 15.1, and that's why I kept it. Staff have now come. I'll go on the board.
Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I thought we were going in for 15.1. I thought that was an update and it didn't go into consent. If it did go into consent, there isn't any reason why 15.2, why we need to go into consent for 15.2. It was something that was added as an update, but only because we were already going in. It's something that I'll get Steve to go to each and every single one of you to let you know what it is. It's nothing major.
Refer.
I'm happy to refer it to council if that's easier.
Mr. Clerk, procedurally, can we do that and then not have to go into closed?
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
So 15.2 could be referred. We could take a vote on that first to council on January 25th, and then we can proceed to deal with the public motion arising from 15.1.
Okay, so item 15.2 to be referred to council next week, moved by Councillor Vicente. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Next item is 15.1, a public motion that the clerk will share.
We'll just bring that up on the screen momentarily. So arising from the closed session report with council not going into closed session, but dealing with this item on consent, there are some public motions arising from that implied direction. And it is shown on the screen that the motions be considered an open session, and there are 4 parts to the motion. It deals with a property acquisition matter. It will require a mover.
Moved by Councillor Vicente, local area councillor. Taken as read. Anyone opposed? Sorry, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. That brings us to adjournment. Our next scheduled Committee of Council meeting is Wednesday, February 1st at 9:30 a.m. I have a motion from Councillor Power to adjourn today's meeting. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That carries. Look at that, before 1:30. Congratulations.